Chapter 2254. Experts gather after leaving the mountain top. Jian Chen returned to his dwelling. He closed his eyes and sank into his thoughts there. Aside from Mo Tianyun, no one else knew he had become a hallowed saint master with a one-colored soul core. He knew from Han Xian that as long as he exposed his identity as a hallowed saint master, the selection of the chosen saint would immediately be annulled, and he would directly become the current chosen saint. After that, he would receive the unconditioned nurturing of the Radiant Saint Hall for the next millennia. Once he became the chosen saint, there would be no difficulty in him entering the Tower of Radiance. He would no longer have to go through all the troubles required for an opportunity to enter the Tower of Radiance. But at the same time, he would become the center of attention if he became the chosen saint. He would be someone that everyone paid attention to and talked about in the Radiant Saint Master. Naturally, many people would investigate him. Although he had Mo Tianyun's mask right now, the mask was only enough to obscure his true identity for most experts. Once he accidentally created a hole in his story, it would be impossible to ensure that observant people would not realize that his identity was fake through these traces. It did not matter too much if his martial soul force was exposed. At most, he would just flee from the Radiant Saint Hall. However, if his other identity was exposed, it would not be as simple as escaping from the Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, Jian Chen became very hesitant about whether he should become the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall. However, Jian Chen's face changed in the next moment. He suddenly looked towards the sky, and his gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the rock above him, allowing him to see the world outside. He could clearly sense the senses of an extremely powerful soul sweep across the territory of the Radiant Saint Hall without any disguise at all. It basically scoured every inch of the land there. In the next moment, a powerful formation rose up, enveloping the entire territory of the Radiant Saint Hall. This was the Radiant Saint Hall's protective formation. It was extremely powerful. The senses of the soul that had swept through the Radiant Saint Hall had activated the formation. Jian Chen's heart sank slightly. He made his way out of his dwelling and looked at the screen of light created by the formation. He fell silent. The screen of light flickered from time to time. Every flicker represented the fact that it had stopped the invasion of the powerful senses of a soul. From how many times it had flickered, it seemed to have stopped over 10 of them. The Radiant Saint Hall will be closing its gates temporarily. All disciples are forbidden from going out during this time without the permission of an elder. At the same time, an ancient voice boomed out like a great bell, resounding through the entire Radiant Saint Hall. Jian Chen looked towards the origins of the voice. He saw that in the distance, a black-robed old man who stood with his arms behind his back in the sacred hall beyond the clouds. He was the one who had called out sternly, "An expert with a soul tree." Jian Chen immediately sensed the old man's cultivation, and he discovered that this old man had surpassed the 7-colored soul core and condensed a soul tree. That was equivalent to primordial realm experts among fighters. It looks like the people searching for the Anatta Tower have come to the desolate plain, Jian Chen thought. At that moment, he could not help but feel glad about the mask from Mo Tianyun, or his identity would have probably been completely exposed from the senses of the soul earlier. Afterwards, Jian Chen remained in seclusion. He comprehended the radiant arts he had received from Han Xian, and also spent a lot of effort in studying the changes to his soul. He did not emerge, maintaining an extremely low profile. The seclusion this time lasted half a month. During that time, everyone's attention shifted away from the defeat of a Radiant Saint Master with a 3-colored soul core to Chongyang, who had a 1-colored soul core because the Radiant Saint Hall was closed off. During that time, Baiyu regularly paid visits to Jian Chen's dwelling, pestering Jian Chen to teach her his tricks to using Radiant Saint Force. She constantly called out to him as senior brother. However, Jian Chen did not become annoyed at all. Jian Chen did have a good impression of Baiyu. When the 4 people from the Snowfall Peak came to make trouble for him, Baiyu was the only person willing to step forward and help him on the Soaring Clouds Peak. At the same time, she was the only person who had truly cared for him. As such, Jian Chen truly accepted her like his younger sister. Senior brother, senior brother. At this moment, the protective formation outside Jian Chen's dwelling fluctuated and Baiyu ran in, huffing and puffing. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes. He looked at Baiyu calmly and asked, "Junior sister, what has happened that has made you so hurried?" "Senior brother, I just returned from the main peak, and I heard an astonishing piece of news from there," Baiyu said excitedly. Jian Chen was interested. He asked, "What news?" Bai Yu took in a breath and said, "Senior brother, you always spend your time in seclusion, so you probably don't know about the huge matter that has happened on the desolate plain. I only just heard the envoys mention it on the main peak. They said that many peak experts have gathered on the desolate plain. The arrival of these peak experts has made all the powerful organizations and clans on the desolate plain close their gates and restrain their clansmen and disciples as if they're about to confront a huge enemy. It's said that these foreign peak experts can easily throw the desolate plain into turmoil. But do you know why they've all come? Senior brother, you probably won't believe it even if I tell you. All these peak experts have come to the desolate plain just to find a god king called Jian Chen." Bai Yu sat down on the ground in an unwomanly manner as she sighed in amazement. Heavens! I really never thought that so many peak experts would come personally just for a god king. I really do wonder what heinous crimes this god king has committed to offend so many peak experts all at once. Jian Chen remained calm when he heard that. He said, "Junior sister, why are you so certain that this person called Jian Chen has committed heinous crimes? Isn't that obvious? If he didn't commit heinous crimes, why would he have offended so many peak experts at the same time?" Bai Yu said naively. Afterwards she said seriously, "But speaking of which, I really do admire this senior called Jian Chen because he's able to avoid being detected while being hunted down by so many peak experts. That's really impressive." Jian Chen fell silent. A while later he suddenly stood up and said, "Junior sister, I need to go somewhere first. Once I return, I'll teach you how to better control Radiant Saint Force." Chapter 2255. Donglin Yanxue Jian Chen left the soaring clouds peak. Using his Radiant Saint Force, he steadily flew towards the depths of the Radiant Saint Hall. The territory of the Radiant Saint Hall was extremely vast. Whether it was from the east to the west or the south to the north, there were 1,000,000 kilometers. There were thousands of mountains within this tremendous region, with 99 of them as main peaks. Jian Chen directly made his way towards one of the 99 peaks, the Guardian Peak. Very soon, Jian Chen left the boundary of the sky-gazing peak. He stood with his hands behind his back as he moved through the mountains while surrounded by milky white Radiant Saint Force. He would be obscured by the clouds from time to time. Along the way, he encountered many Radiant Saint Masters, and a few of them recognized Jian Chen. This person seems to be Chang Yang from around the sky-gazing peak. Why has he come here? Chang Yang? That one-star genius with a one-colored soul core who defeated a Radiant Saint Master with a three-colored soul core? Yeah, he really does look like Chang Yang. However, Chang Yang is just a one-star genius. I think there's probably another side to the story for a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core to defeat a Radiant Saint Master with a three-colored soul core. You're right. The rumor is not trustworthy. If Chang Yang was a 9-star genius, it would make more sense. After all, 9-star geniuses have the ability to challenge those at higher cultivation levels. However, Chang Yang is just a 1-star genius. In terms of talent, he is even worse than me. Is it Junior Chang Yang of the sky-gazing peak up ahead? I am Qi Zheng of the battle peak. I wish to spar with Junior Chang Yang. Similar voices rang out constantly. There were many people who publicly stated their identities and wanted to spar with Jian Chen. After all, Jian Chen had perpetuated his fame by defeating Wen Cheng on the sky-gazing peak. Even though his name had not reached the Sacred Hall and garnered the attention of the elders yet, he was basically someone that everyone outside the Sacred Hall knew about. Jian Chen ignored the suspicions and challenges from the surroundings. He focused on hurrying along, and he moved faster and faster. Especially when he discovered that a few Radiant Saint Masters were pursuing him, he charged into the clouds and used the Radiant Wings, shaking them off with even greater speed. He had no time to waste on these people right now. Chang Yang is actually cowering in fear. He dares not say anything at all. What does that mean? It means he has a guilty conscience. You can tell from this that Chang Yang's battle on the sky-gazing peak was probably fake. Jian Chen's constant avoidance instead provided greater evidence for the suspicions of the Radiant Saint Masters. Several hours later, Jian Chen finally arrived at this destination, the Myriad Flowers Peak. The Myriad Flowers Peak also happened to be one of the 99 main peaks. Due to being covered in thousands of orchids, a heavy fragrance always lingered on the Myriad Flowers Peak. Jian Chen began to conceal his presence after arriving here. Immediately, he vanished from everyone's view, avoiding the layers of formations on the mountain as he carefully infiltrated his way towards the top. At this moment, two white-robed women strolled down on a small path that winded through the mountains. They conversed as they walked. Among the two, one of them seemed to be middle-aged. She was elegant and graceful and had quite the bearing. She possessed the presence of someone important. She was the lord of the myriad flowers peak, Donglin Xueqi. The other woman only seemed to be in her 20s. She was like a goddess, with a fair complexion and dark pupils. She gave off a holy presence as if she was inviolable. She was Donglin Yanxue. She was a great beauty as well as one of the 5 candidates for the next chosen saint. Yanxue, the competition for chosen saint is about to begin. Who knows how great of an influence it is to your future, so you have to cultivate seriously in the sacred hall at a crucial time like this. You can't come here often, the lord of the myriad flowers peak, Donglin Xueqi, said sincerely. Donglin Yanxue sighed gently. She said, Auntie, your hopes on me are too great. Out of the 5 candidates, Gongjing Xin and Xin been getting close to late 4-colored soul cores. By the time the day of the selection comes, it's extremely likely for the 2 of them to have reached it. Dian and Shurda also have mid-4-colored soul cores, while my cultivation is the weakest out of the 5 of us. Even the elders who guided me in the sacred hall do not think I can win against them and become the current chosen saint. As a result, I have no expectations of becoming the chosen saint at all. Donglin Yanshua's voice was filled with helplessness. Don't become downhearted. Isn't there still another 2 years? With your talent, it's not impossible for you to break through once again if you put in the effort. Once you have a mid-4-colored soul core, you'll be standing at the same level as the 4 of them. Only a tiny difference will remain. Donglin Yanxue cheered her on. I can only do my best in these 2 years, Donglin Yanxue said softly. She frowned slightly, clearly feeling pressured. Auntie, I'm rather tired. I'll go back to rest first. All right. Donglin Yanxue returned to the mountain top. She sat on a dark rock within the quiet courtyard her auntie had bestowed upon her as she sank into her thoughts. Everyone wants to become the chosen saint, but it's almost impossible for me to defeat the 4 other 9-star geniuses. Donglin Yanxue was bitter. At the same time, she was unwilling to just give in. Out of the 5 candidates, she was the youngest and also the one who had cultivated for the shortest amount of time, so this competition was very unfair towards her. If she had enough time, she was confident that she could catch up to the 4 others. However, the time she had was just too limited. At this moment, a leaf drifted over the walls of the courtyard. Under the gentle breeze, it landed in Donglin Yanshue's hand in the end, perhaps out of coincidence. The leaf was extremely simple. There were plenty of leaves that had fallen off trees, so Donglin Yanxue did not think too much about it. She wanted to toss it away. But in the next moment, her eyes suddenly narrowed. She stared at the leaf with brimming interest. The veins on the verdant leaf interwove in an unnatural fashion, forming a small line of words. When the moon is full, meet me at Moon's Reflection Lake. I will assist you in becoming the chosen saint. Chapter 2256. The meeting at Moon's Reflection Lake. Assist me in becoming the chosen saint? Who wrote this? What bold words? Donglin Yanxue frowned slightly when she looked at the tiny line of words formed by the veins of the leaf. This was a very ordinary leaf. Changing the veins on it was not difficult, so Donglin Yanxue was unable to determine the strength of the person who had sent this message to her. In the next moment, Donglin Yanxue expanded the senses of her soul in all directions. She wanted to find the person who had sent her this message. But to her disappointment, she found nothing even when she pushed the senses of her soul to the limit. Since this person is confident about assisting me to become the chosen saint, it must mean that they are extraordinary. But what I find strange is the fact that they haven't come to find me directly and told me face to face. Instead, he told me to go to the Moon's Reflection Lake through a method like this. Donglin Yanxue stared at the leaf and thought about it calmly. She gradually became suspicious. Or maybe it's a scheme. They want to lure me to the Moon's Reflection Lake and do something to me? A sliver of coldness flashed through Donglin Yanshue's eyes when she thought of that. Although she was a woman, she was definitely not powerless. But in the next moment, Donglin Yanxue shook her head. She was a 9-star genius of the Radiant Saint Hall and one of the 5 candidates for becoming the chosen saint. Was there anyone who dared to lay their hands on her within the Radiant Saint Hall? The night of the full moon. That's tonight. The Moon's Reflection Lake. Let's go see this mysterious person and hope that they don't disappoint me, Donglin Yanxue murmured gently. The position of chosen saint was irresistible to her. Even if there was only a shred of a chance for her to become the chosen saint, she would never give up on it. Night descended, and the moon rose up in the sky. There was a huge lake surrounded by 8 mountains 10,000 kilometers away from the myriad flowers peak. Under the radiant moon in the sky, the huge lake immediately became illuminated. As far as the eye could see, the entire surface of the lake seemed to be covered by a thick layer of moonlight. It was a landscape of otherworldly beauty. This lake was known as the Moon's Reflection Lake, and it was one of the rather renowned places within the Radiant Saint Hall. At this moment, Jian Chen sat calmly on a huge, dark rock on the shore in white robes that represented his identity as a Radiant Saint Master. He raised his head slightly, falling into a daze as he stared at the huge moon in the sky. So many years have passed already. I wonder how Fairy Haoyu is doing. Her enemy, Nan Patian, has the Flame Reverend Grand Prime behind him. That's a supreme expert who moved against the Anata Grand Prime, one of the 7 grand exalts of the Saints' world. I hope that Fairy Haoyu doesn't do anything reckless. Jian Chen could not help but think of Fairy Haoyu who he had parted with many years ago as he looked at the bright moon. He became filled with worry. At this moment, a gentle ball of white light shot through the night sky and descended by the lake slowly. Afterwards, the white light dispersed and revealed a sacred beauty in a white dress. She was Donglin Yanxue. Donglin Yanxue was in her pure white clothes, and her feet did not touch the ground. She hovered an inch above the ground as she looked around before seeing Jian Chen, who was several kilometers away. At this moment, Jian Chen also looked away from the full moon and directed his gaze towards Donglin Yanxue. He brought his 2 fingers together, and a leaf that fell immediately landed between them. He waved it at Donglin Yanxue, who was several kilometers away. Donglin Yanshue's eyes narrowed. She could not help but study Jian Chen properly before making her way over slowly. She basically approached Jian Chen by flying along the ground. In the end, she drifted onto the rock that Jian Chen sat on. She stood a few meters away from Jian Chen. I originally thought that the person who told me to come here would be a radiant god king at the very least, or even an elder, or maybe an expert that had been sent in from those large clans and organizations. I never thought that it would be a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core. Donglin Yanxue stared at Jian Chen closely as undisguised disappointment filled her eyes. Jian Chen smiled indifferently. My cultivation doesn't matter because it's not important. What is important is that you understand that I can give you something even those elders or organizations can't give. I know you don't believe me. I also know there are many people richer than me, with more cultivation resources than me. However, can these people ensure you emerge victorious in the end? Donglin Yanxue was interested. A strange light flickered in her dark eyes as she stared at Jian Chen in interest. She asked, I really do want to know just what a radiant saint master with a one-colored soul core is relying on to be so confident. Jian Chen smiled mysteriously. With a flip of his hand, a pure soul immediately appeared. The pure soul immediately gave off a pure and turbulent presence when it appeared, attracting both Jian Chen's and Donglin Yanshue's attention. Just a single breath of the presence gave them the impression that their souls were rapidly strengthening. A pure soul. How did you get your hands on something like this? Donglin Yanxue cried out. She was unable to remain composed any longer before the pure soul. Shock and disbelief pervaded her beautiful face. Jian Chen stowed the pure soul away and smiled. Do you believe that I have the ability now? Donglin Yanxue sucked in a deep breath and calmed herself down slowly. She looked at Jian Chen with extremely mixed feelings as she said, Where did you get this pure soul from? Pure souls were extremely precious. Even with Donglin Yanshue's status in the Radiant Saint Hall, she had only managed to learn about them through records and from the elders. She did not even have the right to see one in person. However, Donglin Yanxue completely understood the usage of pure souls. Not only did it have great effects on fighters, but it was also a supreme treasure to Radiant Saint Masters. It was so precious that it was something rare even in the Radiant Saint Hall. Many elders did not even possess them. However, if she gained possession of this pure soul, her chances of becoming the chosen saint would greatly increase. Tell me, what do you want in exchange for the pure soul? Donglin Yanxue held back her excitement. Jian Chen stood up on the rock and said, Every single chosen saint can personally select 9 people as their protectors. I want to be one of them. Of course, you know about the situation with my level of cultivation. Donglin Yenshue's gaze immediately became strange when heard that. She said, "Your final objective in going as far as to give me a pure soul so that I can become the chosen saint is only so that you can become one of my 9 retainers?" Donglin Yenshue's gaze towards Jian Chen became extremely strange. She slowly took a step back and stared at Jian Chen cautiously. She said rather coldly, "What are your intentions? Let me just put it out there first. If you want to approach me like this and make me like you better give up on it." Jian Chen was extremely dumbfounded by that. At that moment, he only felt a headache. He was completely speechless. Chapter 2257. Wondrous Usage of the Soul. You've misunderstood. I have no interest in you, much less any presumptuous thoughts like that. I only want the position so that I can enter the Tower of Radiance, Jian Chen explained with a bitter smile. Some of the cautiousness and contempt in Donglin Yenshue's eyes vanished. She asked, "There's something that I don't understand. Out of the 5 candidates, why have you chosen me, instead of Gongjing Xian or Xian Bin, who are more likely to become the chosen saint?" "It's for a very simple reason. You're the weakest out of the 5 of them, so you should be the one who is the least likely to become the chosen saint. If I can assist you so that you become the chosen saint unexpectedly, you will have more gratitude towards me, and my trip into the Tower of Radiance will be even smoother." Of course, that's only one of the reasons. The main reason is that I've heard about the 5 of you from my teacher. I know some of your past. Although my knowledge is incomplete, I do understand the 5 of you roughly. The feeling you give me is that you're more reliable one compared to the 4 others, said Jian Chen. Do you really just want to enter the Tower of Radiance, and there are no other reasons? Donglin Yanxue looked at Jian Chen closely. Definitely. Very well then. I'll promise you. However, there are only 2 years until the selection, and Xian Bin and Gongjing Xian have both made it to the peak of the mid-4-colored soul core. They will break through at any time. If I want to defeat them, I need to reach late 4-colored soul core. Even though a pure soul is extremely precious and very effective, it's extremely difficult for me to break through the 2 realms in such a short amount of time, said Donglin Yanxue. Jian Chen thought about it and said, "You don't need to worry. Aside from the pure soul, I'll give you a 1,000-leaf lotus. Anyway, since I've chosen you, I will assist you with my greatest ability when you contend for the position of chosen saint." Donglin Yanshue's eyes immediately lit up when she heard him mention the 1,000-leaf lotus. She said, "The Lord of the Sky Gazing Peak happens to have a 1,000-leaf lotus. Gongjing Xian and Xian Bin have visited him time and time again in hopes of getting the 1,000-leaf lotus. But in the end, the Peak Lord bestowed the 1,000-leaf lotus to a radiant saint master with a 1-colored soul core." Donglin Yanxue looked at Jian Chen in a strange light and said, "You should be Chong Yang, the person who defeated a 3-colored soul core radiant saint master with a 1-colored soul core." Jian Chen nodded in confirmation. Then he stowed the pure soul and 1,000-leaf lotus into a separate space ring and passed it to Donglin Yanxue. He said, "If you have any other needs or difficulties during this time, you can find me. As long as I can help you, I will do everything I can." Jian Chen ignored the prices he had to pay for Donglin Yanxue to become the chosen saint so that he could enter the Tower of Radiance. The desolate plain was already filled with experts. Even with Mo Tianyun's mask that prevented most of them from seeing through him, every single one of them was capable of many different methods. As a result, he needed to enter the Tower of Radiance as soon as possible to get his cultivation method so that he could leave the desolate plain. After passing on the items, Jian Chen left and returned to the Soaring Clouds plain. Donglin Yanxue remained on the rock. She held the space ring as she watched Jian Chen leave. The light in her eyes flickered as she wondered, what is Chong Yang's background to be able to casually take out a pure soul that even the elders can't get their hands on? Or does he have no idea about the true usage of pure souls? In the next few days, Han Xian remained in seclusion to heal, so he did not summon the 3 disciples every morning. As a result, Jian Chen's life was extremely peaceful. He remained in his dwelling and rarely went out, cultivating daily. His junior sister Bai Yu had become a frequent guest of his. She basically went to Jian Chen's dwelling daily and would stay there for the whole day. She would go there in the morning and leave reluctantly after the sun had set. Naturally, Bai Yu went there for Jian Chen to teach her about the usage of Radiant Saint Force. Towards his junior sister, Jian Chen naturally did not hold back at all. He passed on all his understanding and method of usage regarding Radiant Saint Force to Bai Yu in great detail. He truly hoped that Bai Yu could become stronger. However, the end result was not favorable. No matter how Jian Chen demonstrated and explained, Bai Yu failed to grasp any of his almost perfect control and usage of Radiant Saint Force. Sigh. Why is it so difficult? I've tried countless times, and it still doesn't work. Senior brother, can you explain to me how you achieve it so easily? Is there some other secret technique? Failing once again, Bai Yu gave up in dejection. Perhaps it has something to do with talent, said Jian Chen. Now, he was certain that his almost perfect control over Radiant Saint Force was not just because of how powerful his soul was. The strand of true chaotic force that had fused with his soul was the most important aspect. It was because of this chaotic force that his soul underwent some kind of transformation, making him possess a closer affinity towards Radiant Saint Force and various laws than any ordinary person. Junior sister, I better explain the laws of the Hallowed to you. I just happened to gain some new comprehension of the laws of the Hallowed when teacher invoked it for me. I hope it can help you, said Jian Chen before immediately explaining what he saw when he was comprehending the laws of the Hallowed and his understanding of the laws. The laws of the Hallowed was one of the 3,000 ways. It was a law of the world and extremely profound. It could not be explained clearly at all. The only way to grasp it was through personal comprehension. Jian Chen did not expect Bai Yu to comprehend the laws of the Hallowed in such a short amount of time. He only hoped that he could help Bai Yu gain an even clearer understanding of the laws of the Hallowed, so that she could avoid some winding bends in the future. However, when Jian Chen explained his understanding of the laws of the Hallowed, he seemed to feel his soul gradually become flexible and unpredictable. The omnipresent laws of the Hallowed seemed to fuse with him, changing as he wished. At this moment, Jian Chen was thinking of building a foundation for Bai Yu to the best of his ability so as to pave a clear path for when she became a Hallowed Saint Master in the future. In the end, he clearly felt the omnipresent laws of the Hallowed begin to break down slowly, presenting itself in the simplest form. It was exactly the same as when Han Xian personally invoked the laws of the Hallowed for Jian Chen, presenting the profound laws in the clearest fashion possible. This method had the same effect as an imprint to pass on laws. The only difference was that Han Xian needed to control his laws of the Hallowed to change slowly when he invoked them, while Jian Chen had completely achieved this through his will. According to what he wanted, the surrounding laws of the Hallowed automatically broke down, making it much simpler. Chapter 2258. Xuefeng's anger. If there was a Hallowed Saint Master in Jian Chen's dwelling, they would discover in surprise that the laws of the Hallowed had actually become a lot simpler all of a sudden. Originally, Bai Yu did not pay too much attention to Jian Chen's explanation of the laws of the Hallowed. After all, Jian Chen only had a one-colored soul core, so how was it possible for his comprehension of the laws of the Hallowed to surpass their first senior brother, Xuefeng? But very soon, she discovered that Jian Chen's voice seemed to boom out and resound in her head like a great bell. It made her mind shudder, causing her blurry understanding of the laws of the Hallowed to clear up gradually. Bai Yu seemed to grasp something. She could not help but close her eyes and sink into a deeper state of comprehension. At the same time, Jian Chen was secretly amazed. He had never thought that his soul would have an ability like this after it had fused with a strand of true chaotic force. At that moment, he felt like he was a monarch, able to command the laws of the world and make the laws of the Hallowed change as he wished. At that moment, Jian Chen felt like his relationship with the laws of the Hallowed was like a lord to his subject. However, Jian Chen had only become a Hallowed Saint Master recently, so his comprehension of the laws of the Hallowed remained at a rudimentary level. As a result, his control over the laws of the Hallowed remained at the same rudimentary level. At the same time, Xuefeng carefully hid in an obscure bush outside of Jian Chen's dwelling with his presence concealed. He stared at Jian Chen's dwelling from afar. Junior sister has been getting closer and closer to Chongyang these days. Not only does she go to his dwelling daily, but she even stays there for the whole day, and when she leaves, she's reluctant. Has their relationship really reached the point where they stick to each other like glue? Xuefeng thought with a sunken face and gritted teeth. He had always liked Bai Yu secretly. Now that he saw Bai Yu and Chongyang's relationship had developed like this, he felt utterly furious. He had even lost his rationality several times. Xuefeng looked at the sky. Darkness had almost completely devoured the sky, and gradually descended over the endless mountains in the surroundings as well. A huge moon rose up in the sky slowly. It's already so late. Why hasn't Junior sister come out yet? God damn it, what are they doing at such a late time? Xuefeng grew more and more flustered. His calmness was gradually devoured by the night as well. In the end, he could not resist anymore. He walked out of the bush furiously and directly destroyed the protective formation outside Jian Chen's dwelling. Jian Chen had been wholeheartedly explaining the laws of the hallowed to Bai Yu with all his concentration, but at this moment, a boom suddenly rang out. The formation outside immediately shattered, and the white-robed Xuefeng strode in from outside with a radiant sword in his hand. His face was sunken. The sudden occurrence made Jian Chen stop. As a result, the laws of the hallowed that permeated the dwelling immediately returned to their previous state, becoming profound once more. Bai Yu, who had been comprehending, was alarmed by the sudden boom as well. She was confused at first, but when she saw Xuefeng stride over with a radiant sword in his hand, she immediately understood everything. Immediately, anger sprang up from the bottom of Bai Yu's heart. She suddenly stood up and pointed at Xuefeng. For the first time, she said loudly and furiously, "First Senior, what are you doing? I clearly was about to comprehend the laws of the hallowed, but you've ruined all my efforts with the disturbance you've caused." Bai Yu was extremely irritated. She was furious. If she continued like that, it was extremely likely for her to break through and become a hallowed Saint Master. There were not many hallowed Saint Masters with 2 colored soul cores in the Radiant Saint Hall. Every single one of them was a prodigy among prodigies. Bai Yu became extremely furious when she saw Xuefeng suddenly get in her way when she was just about to gain such a great honor. She was unable to remain calm no matter what. Xuefeng sucked in a deep breath and forcefully calmed himself down as he stared at the angered Bai Yu. He said coldly and emotionlessly, "I just received news that the disciples of the Snowfall Peak have snuck into Second Junior's dwelling in an attempt to lay their hands on Second Junior. I was worried about Second Junior's safety, which is why I rushed over in a hurry." Xuefeng waved the radiant sword in his hand and said, "Look, I even condensed the radiant sword beforehand. I was ready to fight the people who snuck in here." Xuefeng was indeed prepared for a fight, but it was not against the disciples of the Snowfall Peak who had snuck in here. It was against Jian Chen. Once he discovered that Jian Chen held ill intentions towards Bai Yu, he would attack Jian Chen without any hesitation at all. Unfortunately, what he imagined did not happen. Moreover, it seemed like Bai Yu really was cultivating, so Xuefeng had no reason to attack Jian Chen. Although Jian Chen had defeated Wen Cheng, Xuefeng refused to believe it. He thought it was an exaggerated rumor at most. After all, Jian Chen only had a 1-colored soul core. "Junior sister, it's late. You should return first. I'll keep passing on my experiences to you tomorrow. Comprehending the laws of the hallowed isn't something you can do in a day. Today was just a good start for you. If you can keep going, I'm sure you'll succeed before long." Jian Chen also comforted Bai Yu in a timely manner. Bai Yu finally calmed down slightly from Jian Chen's words. She glanced at the sky and discovered that it was pitch black outside already. She bid farewell to Jian Chen and left. After Bai Yu had left, the radiant sword in Xuefeng's hand gradually dispersed. He looked at Jian Chen and said threateningly, "Chongyang, you better keep your distance from Junior sister. There's me for passing on the laws of the hallowed to you. It's not up to you, a mere Radiant Saint Master with a 1-colored soul core, to give fake guidance to Junior sister." With that, Xuefeng swung his sleeve as he turned around and left directly. Jian Chen stood in the dwelling and looked at the simple formation that Xuefeng had destroyed. He mumbled softly, "I never thought that this Xuefeng would have murderous intent towards me." Jian Chen shook his head gently and made his way out of the dwelling. He cast down the formation again. He never took Xuefeng seriously. After doing all that, Jian Chen sat down in the dwelling again and thought back to what happened when he was passing on laws to Bai Yu. Since I can control the laws of the hallowed to break it down into a simpler form and present it in the clearest fashion possible, doesn't that mean I can use the same method to control the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction? At that moment, Jian Chen felt an urge to try it with the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction. If his guesses were correct, it basically meant that he could allow fighters who had comprehended the laws of the sword and the laws of destruction to comprehend their corresponding laws in the easiest manner possible. Jian Chen became elated at that thought. If his guesses were true, he would be able to make people weaker than him break through in the easiest way without wasting any heavenly resources at all. He could raise a great group of experts in the shortest amount of time possible. Unfortunately, this is the Radiant Saint Hall. Once I use the laws of destruction and the laws of the sword here, I can't be certain that I won't be discovered. As a result, I can't attempt it with any other laws besides the laws of the hallowed here. Chapter 2259. Guilty with wealth. The space within the radiant Saint Hall that stood above the clouds was extremely large. It was like a miniature world. At this moment, a heavy stone door opened within the radiant Saint Hall. A young man in white robes slowly made his way out with his hands behind his back. Young Master Xin, you've emerged? When the two guards in violet robes saw the young man, they immediately went up to receive him warmly. Yeah, the young man referred to as young Master Xin nodded. Undisguised arrogance filled his face. He was one of the 5 candidates to become chosen saint, Gongjing Xin. Gongjing Xin, you've emerged so soon. How has your comprehension of the spirit elation technique gone? A voice rang out. A ruddy old man appeared before Gongjing Xin silently. 2 white-robed radiant saint masters appeared at basically the same time after the old man. As if they had teleported, they appeared silently from far away. One of them was a middle-aged man with a determined expression, while the other was an old woman who seemed to be in her 70s. Disciple Gongjing Xin greets Teacher Ma, Teacher Chen, and Teacher Mao. Gongjing Xin immediately began to show respect with the appearance of the 3 of them. This was because they had all surpassed the 7-colored soul core and condensed soul trees. Experts like that held the position of elder in the Radiant Saint Hall. They possessed great statuses. Every single 9-star genius within the Radiant Saint Hall would receive the personal guidance of elders. And right now, it just happened to be when the new chosen saint would be decided from the 5 9-star geniuses. As a result, the 5 candidates received special treatment, where they would have the guidance of at least a single elder at all times. The people who guided Gongjing Xin happened to be the 3 elders. Teachers, I've already gained a rudimentary comprehension of the spirit elation technique, said Gongjing Xin. Good. You really haven't disappointed us. Gongjing Xin, the day when the chosen saint is decided is getting closer and closer, so you can't afford to tarry at all now. You must cultivate with all your efforts and try to break through so that you can obtain the position and make us proud, one of the elders said sincerely. Yes. I will do everything I can. I won't disappoint the teachers. Gongjing Xin clasped his fist. Afterwards, the 3 elders left together, leaving Gongjing Xin all by himself at the doorway. Although I've reached the peak of the mid-4-colored soul core, it's just too difficult for me to break through in 2 years. I definitely won't be able to achieve it just by cultivating like normal, murmured Gongjing Xin. A cold light flickered through his eyes as he murmured to himself, it's time for me to get that 1,000-leaf lotus. Once I have it, I'll definitely be able to break through in 2 years. Xian Bin should be emerging from seclusion soon as well. I have to be faster than him. I can't let him get the 1,000-leaf lotus. The next morning, Jian Chen was cultivating within his dwelling on the soaring cloud's peak. But at this moment, his formation began to twist, and a black-robed middle-aged man directly passed through, entering the dwelling without any obstruction at all. Jian Chen stopped cultivating. He opened his eyes and stared at the uninvited middle-aged man calmly. He asked indifferently, "Who are you? Why have you barged into my dwelling without my permission?" The formation outside of Jian Chen's dwelling was of an extremely low grade, so it suited his status as a radiant saint master with a 1-colored soul core. However, the black-robed man had a cultivation equivalent to an over-god, so the formation was naturally useless against him. You must be Chong Yang. You sure have managed to stay composed. However, you don't need to know who I am. I've only come to pass on a message for young Master Gongjing Xin. The young master wants you to state a price, and he'll buy the 1,000-leaf lotus from you. The man made his way before Jian Chen calmly and looked at the seated Jian Chen from above. My 1,000-leaf lotus is not for sale, Jian Chen declined without any hesitation. The man frowned, and his voice became slightly gruff. The 1,000-leaf lotus is of great use to young Master Gongjing Xin, and the young master also desires the 1,000-leaf lotus. What you're doing will only offend the young master. That's not a clever decision just for a 1,000-leaf lotus. Gongjing Xin needs it, but does that mean I have to sell it to him? Moreover, there are 5 candidates. It's too early to say who's going to become the future chosen saint, said Jian Chen. The man's face sank slightly. Immediately he snorted coldly, Chong Yang, you have no idea what's best for you. Offending young Master Gongjing Xian won't give you any benefit. Jian Chen remained seated on the ground, but he made his face twist in pain. He already knew that from the moment the black-robed man had stepped onto the soaring cloud's peak, the senses of Han Xian's soul had already been following him closely. I wonder how Han Xian will deal with this matter, thought Jian Chen. However, just when he thought of that, the white-robed Han Xian suddenly appeared before Jian Chen. His face was sunken. He directly grabbed the black-robed man and tossed him out mercilessly. He said, "You've even come to the Soaring Clouds Peak to harass the disciples of my Soaring Clouds Peak? Do you really think it's that easy to set foot in my territory?" Han Xian was already a radiant god king, so the black-robed man was unable to resist at all. When he was thrown away by Han Xian, he directly collided with the formation outside Jian Chen's dwelling before falling to the ground in a ruffled shape. "Protector Han." The black-robed man scrambled to his feet. He looked at Han Xian, and his face immediately changed slightly. "Piss off. Without my permission, you are forbidden from setting foot in my territory," Han Xian said coldly. The black-robed man's face became ugly as he left silently. "Sir." At this moment, Jian Chen stood up and clasped his fist towards Han Xian. Han Xian looked back at Jian Chen, and the coldness on his face immediately melted away. It was replaced by concern. "Chong Yang, has he scared you?" "He hasn't. Fortunately, you made it in time, or who knows what would have happened," Jian Chen said with composure. Han Xian sighed gently from that. Now that the competition for the chosen saint is approaching, the 5 candidates will be doing everything they can to increase their strength. The 1,000-leaf lotus just happens to be able to bring evident effects to their cultivation, so they naturally won't give up on it. Han Xian looked at Jian Chen sternly and said, "According to my understanding of Gongjing Xian, he definitely won't give up on it. He'll definitely come again, and even Xian Bin will probably stick his nose into this matter. It's best if you find a way to get rid of your 1,000-leaf lotus appropriately. You can't offend the 9-star geniuses too much. Their future potential is far greater than mine. Thank you for your concern, sir. I understand what to do." The black-robed man who had been thrown out by Han Xian stood before Gongjing Xian and reported Jian Chen's reply truthfully to Gongjing Xian. Gongjing Xian's face immediately sank from the black-robed man's explanation. He snorted coldly. "This Chong Yang really has no idea what's best for him. Not only did he defy my orders within the ring, but he even dares to turn me down when I want to exchange with him. If it weren't for the rule that forbids the murders of fellow disciples in the Radiant Saint Hall, I definitely would not let him live." Gongjing Xian looked at the black-robed man and said like he was giving an order, "Go to the Snowfall Peak and tell Wen Cheng to see me." Chapter 2260. A reversal of wrong and right, disciple Chong Yang of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Get your asterisks out here. Why won't you return what you owe to young Master Gongjing Xian? The Soaring Clouds Peak was fated to not get any peace on this day. The black-robed man who Han Xian had thrown out returned to the region around the Soaring Clouds Peak a few hours later. However, he did not set foot in the territory of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Instead, he hovered high in the air, calling out loudly. His voice was extremely loud, like thunder. Not only did it boom across the entire Soaring Clouds Peak, causing the trees and grass on the mountain to shake, but it even reached a few neighboring mountains clearly. He did not try to keep quiet at all. With his cultivation akin to an over-god, he directly alarmed the peaks in the surroundings. Immediately, figures flickered among the mountains, and many radiant saint masters looked over. The low-level formation that Jian Chen had just cast down was naturally unable to cut off the sound. As a result, Jian Chen was forcefully roused from cultivation. He really is persistent. Jian Chen opened his eyes and made his way out of the dwelling with a frown. He stared at the figure in the sky from afar as a sliver of irritation appeared in his eyes. "Senior brother, what has happened? Why does that person say you owe Gongjing Xian?" Bai Yu arrived before Jian Chen using Radiant Saint Force and glanced at the black-robed man in the distance before asking Jian Chen in doubt. "He has come for the 1,000-leaf lotus," Jian Chen said indifferently. "Junior brother, what exactly do you owe Gongjing Xian? You've actually made them come all the way to our mountain, shouting out loud. If this spreads, how will we, the disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak, still have the dignity to show ourselves before others?" The first senior brother, Xueqi, also made his way over. Before he had even arrived, His critical voice had already reached them. When he arrived before Jian Chen, he glared at him as he lectured sternly. Since you owe someone something, hurry up and return it to them. Isn't it embarrassing enough? Jian Chen glanced at Xuefeng and scoffed. Senior brother, the saint's world is filled with danger, and people scheme everywhere. You naturally don't know about these dangers since you haven't truly witnessed it all. When you truly make it out of the protective bubble around you and personally experience the weathering of the saint's world, you'll discover that this world isn't as peaceful as you thought it to be. However, at that time, it'll probably be too late for you. That's because many people will have already died by then. As a result, I want to use this matter to teach you a proper lesson, to make you truly understand the dangers of the world. Senior brother, you only need to stand to one side and watch. Chongyang, how dare you? Xuefeng's face became extremely sunken. He clearly understood that Jian Chen was scorning him. In particular, Jian Chen's disdainful attitude made Xuefeng absolutely furious. He felt like his pride as the first senior brother was being challenged. Gongjing Xian? Isn't he one of the 5 candidates for chosen saint? Chongyang actually dares to borrow something from candidate Gongjing Xian and not return it? Isn't he far too bold? Junior Chongyang, just what do you owe young master Gongjing Xian? Junior Chongyang, since you owe someone something, you better return it quick. You owe someone something, yet you don't return it. If this makes it out, not only will it be a stain to Junior Chongyang's name, but even the name of the Soaring Clouds Peak will be affected. At this moment, Radiant Saint Masters flew over one after another from the nearby mountains. They all criticized Jian Chen. Jian Chen smiled indifferently. He directly looked at the black-robed man and said, I really do want to know what exactly I owe to Gongjing Xian. Jian Chen's words immediately made the Radiant Saint Master in the surroundings stop talking. They all looked at the black-robed man. Immediately, the black-robed man sniggered coldly. He said loudly, Back when you fought Wen Chang on the Sky-Gazing Peak, the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak gave you 1,000-leaf lotus as a reward to the final victor. And you secretly asked for assistance from young Master Gongjing Xian to achieve victory, where you would give young Master Gongjing Xian the reward after you won. The black-robed man did not try to tone it down at all. As a result, every single word of his boomed out like thunder. It was no longer just the mountains near the Sky-Gazing Peak. Even the disciples on mountains further away heard about the secret behind why Chongyang was able to defeat an opponent far more powerful than him. Discussions sprang up. I never thought there would be another story to Chongyang's glorious victory. So it was like that. Like I was saying, how can someone with a 1-colored soul core defeat a Radiant Saint Master with a 3-colored soul core? No wonder Chongyang fled in the end when I met him last time and wanted to spar with him. It looks like he's not as powerful as he's rumored to be, which is why he's not bold enough to accept. Quick, spread the news. Let everyone learn the truth. Chongyang is a sham. Not only were the Radiant Saint Masters around the Soaring Clouds Peak discussing this, but similar discussions sprang up in the surrounding mountains as well. The news even reached the Sky-Gazing Peak with astonishing speed before spreading out in all direction from there. Jian Chen's victory over a Radiant Saint Master with a 3-colored soul core had once shaken up the Radiant Saint Hall, where basically everyone knew about it. If it were not for the sudden closure of the Radiant Saint Hall that shifted everyone's attention, the matter would probably continue to build up and even make it to the Sacred Hall in the end. However, when everyone thought they had learnt the truth, they were naturally astonished. It's not like that. It's not like that. Bai Yu became temporarily flustered from everyone's conversations. She knew that if this really made its way out, her senior brother's reputation would be permanently damaged. Unfortunately, she felt very helpless against the rumors and gossip between the disciples. She was unable to explain it to them. On the other hand, Jian Chen remained completely composed. He did not care about this at all. He said calmly, Do you have evidence? The black-robed man sniggered coldly. Evidence? Of course. Where's Wen Cheng? Very soon, Wen Cheng flew over from the Snowfall Peak while surrounded by Radiant Saint Force. His face was sunken, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. The second senior brother of the Snowfall Peak, Wen Cheng, has actually come. Senior Wen Cheng was directly involved. He would understand the situation back then the best. Let's see what Junior Wen Cheng has to say first. Many disciples discussed in the surroundings. Even a few of the more powerful disciples that had a 3-colored soul core or greater became interested in the matter. Wen Cheng sneered from the bottom of his heart as he listened to the surrounding discussions. He already knew what he had to do, so as soon as he arrived, he stared at Jian Chen emotionlessly and growled, "Chong Yang, do you really think you can defeat me with your measly one-colored soul core? If it were not for young Master Gongjing Xian's message that day, forcing me to be defeated, do you still think you could have been victorious over me?" Chapter 2261. The Radiant Palm. Wen Cheng smiled coldly as he scoffed at Jian Chen, and I had felt very confused back in the ring that day. I didn't understand why young Master Gongjing Xian wanted me to lose to a Radiant Saint Master with a one-colored soul core. But now, I finally understand. As it turned out, you secretly pleaded for the young master to help you so that your name would become widespread in the Radiant Saint Hall, which would fulfill your vanity. And in return, you would offer the 1,000-leaf lotus you won from the fight to the young master. However, I never thought you were like this, Chong Yang. Because of young Master Gongjing Xian, I purposefully lost to you in the ring, allowing you to have the final victory. However, you decided to keep the 1,000-leaf lotus to yourself in the end, unwilling to complete your end of the deal. Chong Yang, does someone as depraved as you still have the dignity to remain in the Radiant Saint Hall? Wen Cheng's tone became vicious towards the end. He felt the sweet joy of revenge. He had agreed to all of this with Gongjing Xian beforehand. Gongjing Xian was willing to go as far as he needed to get the 1,000-leaf lotus and break through successfully in the remaining 2 years. However, Wen Cheng had always believed that his defeat to Jian Chen in the ring the other day was a permanent stain to his name. He had almost gone insane during the past few days, unwilling to see anyone at all. As a result, Wen Cheng agreed without any hesitation at all when Gongjing Xian sent people to find him and told him his plans. According to what he believed, not only were there no downsides to assisting Gongjing Xian in flipping the situation against Jian Chen and framing him, but he would even be able to redeem his shame and lost dignity through a valid excuse. The Radiant Saint Masters who constantly gathered over became enlightened when they heard Wen Cheng's words. As they talked among themselves, their gazes towards Jian Chen all changed. The gazes were filled with disappointment, contempt, disdain, and even undisguised scorn. They did indeed look down on such actions. Wen Cheng, you're despicable. You're purposefully making the truth the complete opposite. It was nowhere like that the other day, Bai Yu yelled at Wen Cheng angrily from beside Jian Chen. Unfortunately, her words did not seem believable at all when the others heard them. Humph, I never thought my soaring cloud's peak would have such a shameless disciple. You've completely embarrassed us. Junior sister, don't spend any more time with someone like him. Xuefeng also stood to one side and criticized Jian Chen like he possessed seniority. He did not care about the reality of the matter. As long as there was an opportunity to humiliate Jian Chen, he would never miss it. He did not treat Jian Chen like his junior brother at all. Jian Chen's eyes turned cold from that. He knew Xuefeng held prejudice towards him. He did not care about it if no one was present, but now that so many disciples from other mountains were here, Xuefeng ignored the bigger picture and even wanted to make trouble for him, helping outsiders against him. This truly angered Jian Chen. Xuefeng, the one who has embarrassed the soaring cloud's peak is you, know me. It looks like it's time for you to understand something, Jian Chen said to Xuefeng coldly. He formed a seal with his hand and directly pressed it towards Xuefeng. Immediately, powerful radiant saint force surged over and condensed into a meter-wide hand. It shone with dazzling light as it pressed towards Xuefeng. This is the radiant palm. Impossible. Xuefeng's eyes narrowed drastically as disbelief filled his face. He promptly tried to counterattack, condensing a radiant sword and swinging out with it. However, when his radiant sword landed on the radiant palm, it shattered to pieces, while the radiant palm continued without slowing, slamming into Xuefeng heavily. Xuefeng immediately grunted and staggered a few steps back. He would leave behind a deep footprint in the ground with each step. When he finally stabilized himself, his face darkened paled. He was both shocked and furious. That's the radiant palm. Heavens, he has actually grasped the radiant palm. The radiant palm is a radiant arte of an impressive grade. It said you need a 3-colored soul core at the very least to grasp it. What do you know? The radiant palm is far more profound than you've imagined it to be. Only a handful of people have managed to grasp the radiant palm with a 3-colored soul core. Most people truly gain a basic grasp with a 4-colored soul core. What? The radiant palm can only be grasped by people with 4-colored soul cores. Yet Chongyang has managed to cast it with just a one-colored soul core. Heavens, this is astonishing. This is completely inconceivable. Not only did Jian Chen stun Bai Yu when he used the Radiant Palm, but even the Radiant Saint Masters who had gathered over struggled to remain calm. They all cried out as they looked at Jian Chen like they were looking at a monster. As for Wen Cheng, his face had become terrifyingly sunken as resentment and envy filled his eyes. At this moment, he was forced to accept a brutal reality. In just a dozen or so days, Jian Chen's strength had increased drastically. At the very least, even Wen Cheng himself still had not truly grasped the Radiant Palm. Chongyang really has not disappointed me. His talent truly is monstrous, having comprehended the Radiant Palm in such a short amount of time. I just wonder whether he has achieved a basic grasp over the other radiant arts I showed him. Han Xian smiled gladly on the top of the soaring cloud's peak. He was satisfied with his disciple. Jian Chen ignored the cries in the surroundings. He looked at Zhuo Feng coldly and said, "Zhuo Feng, do you understand now? You may be the first senior brother of the soaring cloud's peak, but you don't have the capability to tell me what to do. You might not be able to defeat Wen Cheng, but that doesn't mean I can't." Afterwards, he no longer paid any more attention to Zhuo Feng's ugly expression. Instead, he looked towards Wen Cheng and sneered, "Wen Cheng, it looks like the slap I gave you that day wasn't enough. Why don't we fight again in the ring so that everyone can see whether you actually forfeited purposefully last time or your strength was just lackluster? Though you got slapped because of your forfeit. That's quite the price to pay," Jian Chen sniggered. "Yeah, Wen Cheng. I still remember when your entire face was reduced to a mess by senior brother. You even fainted. Was that fake as well?" Bai Yu followed up and said seriously. Wen Cheng's face paled in anger from that. Immediately, his anger turned against him and disturbed his inner flow of energy, causing blood to spray from his mouth. This matter had already left a permanent shadow in his heart. It was a vicious wound and the greatest humiliation in his life. He would not have the face to see anyone again. Now that it was mentioned again before everyone, he became extremely furious. "Chongyang, stop lying." Wen Cheng immediately lost his cool. His face warped as he bellowed at Jian Chen. "We'll know whether it's a lie or not when we fight again. Wen Cheng, are you willing to take me on in the ring again to prove your claims?" Jian Chen said leisurely. Chapter 2262. Donglin Yanshue's arrival. Wen Cheng's face immediately sank. Even though he was exasperated, he dared not agree to it. He became even less confident after Jian Chen used the Radiant Palm. If he was defeated again and sent flying out of the ring with a slap, he really would no longer have the dignity to remain alive. Impressive. The two of you only need to fight again, and you'll be able to determine whether Wen Cheng lost purposefully or not. At this moment, a pleasant giggle rang out. A beautiful woman flew over from the distance, directly flying onto the soaring cloud's peak and arriving near Jian Chen. It's Donglin Yanxue of the 5 candidates. Why has she come? The woman's arrival immediately led to cries in the surroundings. At that moment, everyone shifted their gazes from Wen Cheng and Jian Chen to her. Many of the gazes were filled with infatuation and love. The arrival of Donglin Yanxue surprised Wen Cheng slightly as well. He looked at Donglin Yanshue's almost sacred beauty, and a sliver of well-hidden admiration appeared in the depths of his eyes as well. However, his face immediately became ashen when he thought about what she had just said. "Why have you come?" Jian Chen looked at Donglin Yanxue and asked in surprise. Donglin Yanxue raised an eyebrow and said, "What, your soaring cloud's peak does not welcome me?" Jian Chen smiled bitterly. "How could we not welcome any of the 5 candidates? It's just that you really haven't come at a good time." "Really?" Donglin Yanxue smiled gently, "But I feel like I've come at the perfect time." Bai Yu, who stood to one side, also became dumbfounded when she saw Jian Chen interact with Donglin Yanxue so freely like he knew her already. Bai Yu struggled to imagine just how her senior Chongyang was able to get to know one of the revered candidates, Donglin Yanxue. There were many people who were deeply infatuated with Donglin Yanxue among the disciples of other mountains. Their eyes had become filled with a vicious light, and they glared at Jian Chen like tigers. There were various kinds of envy and jealousy within their gazes. Donglin Yanshue's arrival immediately made her the center of attention. She drew over the gazes of many powerful Radiant Saint Masters, where many of the Radiant Saint Masters with 4-colored, 5-colored, or even 6 colored soul cores set out and gathered over. All of these people had come for Donglin Yanxue. Junior Yanxue, why have you come? Junior Yanxue, how can you be standing on the Soaring Clouds Peak? With your status, the measly Soaring Clouds Peak does not match you at all. Why don't you come to our Azure Clouds Peak? Junior Yanxue, if you don't mind, you're welcome to come to our Thundercry Peak. Our Peak Lord has already prepared wonderful alcohol. At that moment, all the Radiant Saint Masters with 4 colored soul cores or above extended their invitations to Donglin Yanxue. However, Jian Chen immediately felt various cold gazes land on him from the Radiant Saint Masters in the surroundings. It made him smile bitterly inside. He really had no idea whether Donglin Yanxue's arrival was a curse or a blessing. Donglin Yanxue looked at Wen Cheng and said calmly, "What do you think of the proposal I mentioned before? You and Chongyang can spar again so that you can show whether your defeat last time was really due to Gongjing Xian's plans, or you were just not as powerful as Chongyang." Yeah. Wen Cheng, go fight with Chongyang in the ring. Defeat him and show us you're telling the truth. In my opinion, the battle will probably be tough. Didn't you see Chongyang use the Radiant Palm? Along with Donglin Yanxue's words, the people around the Soaring Clouds Peak all began to call out. They wanted to make trouble. Wen Cheng's face became completely sunken. He stood there silently. Donglin Yanxue, why have you come? At this moment, a cold snort rang out. Gongjing Xian had also arrived. He was in his usual white robes. He hovered in the sky and stared at Donglin Yanxue and Jian Chen coldly. It's young Master Gongjing Xian. He has actually come as well. Heavens, I'm actually seeing young Master Gongjing Xian. The young master is so handsome. It's normally difficult to see any of the 5 candidates, but I'm seeing 2 of them right now. What's the special occasion? Gongjing Xian's arrival immediately led to another uproar in the surroundings. Many of the young beautiful women ogled at Gongjing Xian with undisguised infatuation. A 9-star genius, one of the 5 candidates for Chosen Saint, with a handsome appearance and extraordinary bearing. Gongjing Xian had already become the Prince Charming in the hearts of many girls. They were tempted to throw themselves at him. What? Only you're allowed to come, and I'm not? Donglin Yanxue felt no fear towards Gongjing Xian since she was one of the 5 candidates as well, so she asked boldly. Donglin Yanxue, this has nothing to do you with. It's best that you leave, Gongjing Xian said indifferently. He caught sight of Jian Chen standing beside Donglin Yanxue. If she desired to meddle with his business, it was extremely likely that she could ruin it all. After all, with Donglin Yanxue's status, she completely possessed the right to ask the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak to make a statement and reveal the truth, something that Chongyang could not achieve by himself. Before Donglin Yanxue could say anything, Gongjing Xian looked at Jian Chen with a threatening gaze and said condescendingly, "Chongyang, hand over the 1,000-leaf lotus, and I'll forget this happened in the first place." Donglin Yanxue smiled mysteriously when she heard that. With a flip of her hand, she took out something from her space ring and said to Gongjing Xian, "Are you talking about this?" Unsurprisingly, she was holding the 1,000-leaf lotus Jian Chen had given her. The appearance of the heavenly resource immediately made Gongjing Xian's face change slightly. He stared right at the lotus in Donglin Yanxue's hand and growled, "Why is it with you? I obviously gave it to Senior Yanxue." Gongjing Xian, is there a problem with that? Jian Chen directly called him by his name and showed no respect at all. However, the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak rewarded me with the 1,000-leaf lotus, so I naturally have the right to give it to whoever I want. If I don't want to give it to you, you won't be able to take it from me even if you use your schemes. Jian Chen looked straight at Gongjing Xian and completely ignored the latter's status as one of the candidates. He said, "Gongjing Xian, you might be one of the candidates for Chosen Saint, but a candidate is still just a candidate in the end. Others might step aside for the sake of you in the Radiant Saint Hall, but if you don't know when to stop and keep pressuring people, you'll only make trouble for yourself." Jian Chen's words stunned everyone present. He had completely and utterly offended Gongjing Xian with that. Chapter 2263. Settling down. A mere Radiant Saint Master with a 1-colored soul core was getting in the way of a candidate before everyone. Many people secretly admired his courage, causing them to hold Jian Chen in a new light. However, there were also others that looked at Jian Chen in delight when they thought about what he would suffer in the future. His days would be numbered after offending a chosen saint candidate. Chongyang, you're very impressive. I will remember everything you've said. Gongjing Xian's face was terrifyingly sunken. He stressed each word as killing intent filled his eyes. Senior Yan Xue, this Gongjing Xian has been collaborating with Wen Cheng to use the battle that day to slander me. He wanted to get the 1,000-leaf lotus that the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak gave me. There's probably no one apart from the Peak Lord who can produce powerful evidence to prove this matter and redeem my innocence. However, seeing the Peak Lord is basically impossible with my status, so I can only ask Senior Yan Xue to visit the Peak Lord for me, and then announce the outcome of the visit and let everyone know whether I actually used Gongjing Xian's help to defeat Wen Cheng and obtain this reward, Jian Chen said to Donglin Yan Xue. He did not try to tone it down at all, allowing his voice to spread afar. Donglin Yan Xue giggled. She glanced at Jian Chen deeply and said, I will naturally help you for the sake of the 1,000-leaf lotus and prove that you're innocent. All right, very impressive. Gongjing Xian's face darkened in anger. He glared at Jian Chen with gritted teeth before turning around and leaving. He knew that as long as Donglin Yan Xue stood with Jian Chen, he would be unable to do anything to Jian Chen. Moreover, Jian Chen did not seem to revere him like the other disciples, so remaining any longer was pointless. With Gongjing Xian's departure, Wen Cheng and the black-robed man naturally did not linger. They said nothing and fled from the soaring clouds peak in a hurry. At the same time, on a distant mountain, Xian Bin, also one of the candidates, stood with his arms behind his back. He observed what happened from afar. I never thought Chongyang would actually give the 1,000-leaf lotus to Donglin Yan Xue. Since it has ended up in her hands, it's basically impossible for me to get it. But that should be for the better. Donglin Yan Xue is the weakest. Even with the 1,000-leaf lotus, it won't bring a huge advantage towards her candidacy for chosen saint. As long as Gongjing Xian, and De, and Sherde don't get it, it won't be able to influence much. Xian Bin murmured to himself. He was rather satisfied with this outcome. Then he left the mountain peak with radiant saint force. The matter raised by the 1,000-leaf lotus came to an end. All the more powerful radiant saint masters of the various peaks extended their invitation towards Donglin Yan Xue again. The soaring clouds peak became extremely busy during this time. However, Donglin Yan Xue declined all of the warm invitations without any hesitation. Half an hour later, all the radiant saint masters gathered on the soaring clouds peak returned to their own mountains. The busy soaring clouds peak finally recovered its usual peace. Senior Chongyang. How do you know Senior Yan Xue? Why haven't I heard you mention it before? As soon as the soaring clouds peak settled down, Bai Yu arrived beside Jian Chen and grabbed his hand affectionately and asked. On the other hand, Xuefeng stood in the distance silently with a sunken face. He glanced at Donglin Yan Xue and Jian Chen as the flames of envy smoldered within the depths of his eyes. God damn it! How does Chongyang know Senior Yan Xue? How is it possible for them to know each other? Xuefeng thought as he gritted teeth. He liked Bai Yu, while Donglin Yan Xue was someone like a goddess to him. She was an existence he could only look up to and never stand on equal grounds with. Yet this exact same goddess was actually acquainted with Jian Chen, and even stood forward to speak for Jian Chen even if it meant offending Gongjing Xian. It was not a great feeling for Xuefeng. Junior sister. I'll explain to you later. I have something to discuss with Senior Yan Xue, so you should go back first, Jian Chen said to Bai Yu. Bai Yu immediately wrinkled her nose in displeasure and snorted gently. Senior brother, don't you have to pass on your comprehension of the laws of the hallowed to me? And you need to teach me the radiant palm as well. All right. I'll teach you another day. It's just that I really am busy right now, Jian Chen smiled. He had truly accepted Bai Yu inside, treating her as his younger sister. He showered her with care. Senior Chongyang. Remember that's what you said. I'll come to find you tomorrow. You have to help me with all you have. Bai Yu glanced at Donglin Yan Xue before leaving alone. As for Xuefeng, he naturally needed no reminder from Jian Chen. After Bai Yu had left, he glanced at Donglin Yan Xue, who remained there, with mixed feelings. He walked off into the distance with disorderly thoughts. However, he did not go too far away. He stopped at a certain distance away from Jian Chen's dwelling, hiding there secretly to observe the dwelling. Or more correctly, he was observing Jian Chen and Donglin Yan Xue's relationship. Chongyang, it looks like your senior really does care about you, Donglin Yanxue said mysteriously. Clearly, she had noticed that Xuefeng was spying on them. Jian Chen shook his head as he gave a bitter smile. He did not try to explain Xuefeng's behavior. Tell me. You've come all the way from the Myriad Flowers Peak. What do you need from me? Donglin Yanxue glanced at Jian Chen deeply and said, I heard you have quite the achievement in the usage and grasp over Radiant Saint Force. I've come to find you for this. You wish me to teach you the method of using Radiant Saint Force. Jian Chen looked at Donglin Yanxue in some surprise. Donglin Yanxue shook her head gently and corrected him. It's not teach but to discuss and share. Jian Chen nodded understandingly. He smiled. Not everyone can grasp my method. It'll probably be very difficult to benefit from me. How is it impossible for me to do something that even you with your one-colored soul core can achieve? Donglin Yanxue replied with a question. All right then. Let's do it. However, before all this, I still need you to go to the sky-gazing peak and get some evidence regarding the thousand-leaf lotus. I think the Peak Lord will see you with your status as a candidate. Donglin Yanxue was mildly surprised by that. She looked at Jian Chen seriously and asked, You're serious? Of course I'm serious. Gongjing Xian has come for me time and time again. If I don't counterattack, he'll think I'm just an easy target. This time, I will definitely humiliate Gongjing Xian with the evidence. Jian Chen's face sank, and a vicious light flickered through his eyes. Donglin Yanshue's face hardened. She carefully studied Jian Chen's ordinary face that he had created from the mask as if she had just met him. A while later, Donglin Yanxue nodded solemnly. She said sternly, All right. I'll go to the sky-gazing peak right now. However, I hope you can consider the consequences clearly. The people behind Gongjing Xian are not as simple as those behind Wen Cheng. With that, Donglin Yanxue directly made her way towards the sky-gazing peak. Chapter 2264. Mutual exchanges. Very soon, Donglin Yanxue returned. She came back with a crystal that recorded her conversation with the Lord of the Sky-Gazing Peak. Take it. I've gotten what you want. Donglin Yanxue passed the crystal to Jian Chen and continued, It looks like even the Peak Lord takes displeasure in some of Gongjing Xian's actions. When I asked the Peak Lord about the thousand-leaf lotus, he clearly knew I was recording it, but he did not stop me. As a result, getting the evidence was extremely easy. Jian Chen accepted the crystal and immediately sent the senses of his soul inside. Donglin Yanxue and the Peak Lord promptly appeared before him along with their voices. Jian Chen heard their conversation clearly. Disciple Chongyang of the Soaring Clouds Peak only had a one-colored soul core, but I became utterly amazed and lost in wonder by his usage of Radiant Saint Force. After he defeated Wen Cheng, who had a far greater cultivation, I bestowed my thousand-leaf lotus to Chongyang on a whim. Peak Lord, was the thousand-leaf lotus not a reward prepared for the victor? Of course not. I only bestowed it to Chongyang on a whim. The few lines from the Peak Lord completely separated the matter of the thousand-leaf lotus from Gongjing Xian. Jian Chen's senses of his soul receded from the crystal. He clutched it tightly as he gradually revealed a sneer. He wanted to see how Gongjing Xian would respond once the contents of the crystal were made public. Gongjing Xian, I definitely won't be giving you a way out of this time, thought Jian Chen. I've helped you already, so shouldn't you consider my matters now? Donglin Yanxue said. Jian Chen nodded. With a flip of his hand, the crystal vanished. He casually glanced at where Xuefeng hid before making a gesture to invite Donglin Yanxue into his dwelling. Then he made his way into his dwelling. Donglin Yanxue immediately became stunned when she saw Jian Chen enter his dwelling. A gleam of light flickered in her eyes as she hesitated. But in the end, she made up her mind and entered Jian Chen's dwelling. Senior Yanxue has actually entered Chongyang's dwelling. How is this possible? Xuefeng became completely dumbfounded when he clearly witnessed this from afar. He was about to explode with envy. What's so good about Chongyang? It was Junior Baiyu first, and now Senior Yanxue. Senior Yanxue is like a resplendent pearl of the Radiant Saint Hall in particular. Damn it! Xuefeng's face was twisted. He could accept Baiyu, but Donglin Yanxue of all people as well? She was someone he treated like a goddess, sacred and inviolable. In the end, his goddess was actually completely unfazed and entered Jian Chen's dwelling, which drove him mad. Xuefeng even wished to become Jian Chen at that moment. Jian Chen and Donglin Yanxue sat before each other in Jian Chen's simple dwelling. A cluster of radiant saint force shone with gently white light as it leapt about like a little wisp on the tip of his finger. Radiant saint force is just like a limb of mine, my body, or even a part of my soul. As long as it exists in the surroundings, I'm able to create a wondrous connection with it and control it, making it change to my will. Pay close attention. Jian Chen was both concentrated and serious. The radiant saint force seemed to be alive in his hands, constantly changing between various forms. It moved as he wished. With a thought, it turned into a radiant sword, but in the next moment, it turned into a radiant shield. Everything happened smoothly. His control over radiant saint force seemed limitless. Donglin Yanxue paid close attention as she concentrated on Jian Chen's actions. She would close her eyes to comprehend it at times, or control radiant saint force to experiment around with it at other times. In the end, Donglin Yanxue had to admit that although she was much more powerful than Jian Chen in terms of cultivation, she was nowhere close to his grasp and almost perfect usage of radiant saint force. Donglin Yanxue did not even gain a rudimentary grasp over it after so many attempts. However, Donglin Yanxue did not become dejected. She was not afraid of failure. She constantly tried and confirmed or disproved her thoughts. In the end, she used her talent to slowly discover this new method of use. Although it was nowhere close to Jian Chen's, her usage over radiant saint force did reach a whole new level. Enchanted, Donglin Yanxue completely submerged herself in the entire process. She forgot about time and would ask Jian Chen to confirm her thoughts and discuss their experiences frequently to make up for her mistakes. Gradually, the new method of control that she had discovered approached perfection. As for Jian Chen, he managed to benefit from Donglin Yanxue as well. Through their conversations, he managed to come in contact with a higher level of the laws of the hallowed. Moreover, he gained a rough understanding of the four-colored soul core from Donglin Yanxue. It could be said that both of them managed to benefit from this exchange. Unknowingly, half a month had already passed since Donglin Yanxue entered Jian Chen's dwelling. During this period of time, the rumors regarding Chongyang and Donglin Yanxue had caused quite the buzz in the Radiant Saint Hall. Everyone knew about it. At first, it was the truth as to why Chongyang could defeat Wen Cheng as well as his non-existent agreement with Gongzheng Xian. It had spread to most of the mountains through word of mouth, causing all the disciples to feel contempt for Jian Chen. But very soon, this news was replaced by how Donglin Yanxue had spent a long time in Chongyang's dwelling. All the Radiant Saint Masters within the Radiant Saint Hall guessed at their relationship. Rumors sprang up everywhere during this time. At the same time, all of the powerful Radiant Saint Masters who adored Donglin Yanxue were angered. Many of them gathered on the Soaring Clouds Peak, forcing the Lord of the Peak, Han Xian, to personally come out and seal up the mountain, forbidding anyone from setting foot there. However, there were many disciples and descendants of elders among them. Han Xian felt greatly pressured when they worked together against him. Only when Donglin Xueqi, the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak, one of the 99 main peaks, arrived did these Radiant Saint Masters of great status settle down. Half a month later, Donglin Yanxue finally emerged from Jian Chen's dwelling, but as soon as she made her way out, she became dumbfounded. The protective formation of the Soaring Clouds Peak had already been activated. Many Radiant Saint Masters gathered in the air, blocked out by the formation. On the Soaring Clouds Peak, near Jian Chen's dwelling, Han Xian and Donglin Xueqi stood beside each other as they stared at Donglin Yanxue. "Auntie, why have you come?" Donglin Yanxue saw Donglin Xueqi, and her expression immediately became rather unnatural when she thought about how long Donglin Xueqi had been waiting, along with the fact that she had spent half a month in Chongyang's dwelling. "Look at you. You don't even pay any attention to the mess you can create. If I didn't come, would you have been able to cultivate for half a month in peace?" Donglin Yanxue shot a glance at Donglin Yanxue with a fake sense of irritation and rebuked her. "But I need to say that you really haven't come here for nothing. Although that kid called Chongyang's cultivation is nothing special, his understanding of Radiant Saint Force is peculiar. You've managed to benefit quite a lot by exchanging experiences with him," continued Donglin Xueqi. "Auntie, you know? Humph, if I didn't know what you were doing inside, why would I ever let you stay in a man's dwelling for so long? I would have dragged you out long ago." "Let's go," Donglin Yanxue said in frustration. She did not let Donglin Yanxue respond, directly pulling her away. Chapter 2265. A brewing storm. Now that the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak had personally come to take Donglin Yanxue away, none of the powerful Radiant Saint Masters gathered outside the Soaring Clouds Peak dared to stand in their way. Quite a few of them even looked at Donglin Xueqi with dread. However, the Radiant Saint Masters felt no fear toward the Soaring Clouds Peak. After Donglin Xueqi and Donglin Yanxue had left, many of the Radiant Saint Masters immediately shifted their gazes towards Jian Chen. Their eyes were filled with coldness and hostility. Chongyang, it's best if you maintain a certain distance from Donglin Yanxue. Donglin Yanxue's identity is not simple. She's a direct descendant of the Donglin clan. The difference between your statuses is just too great, and there are many people who are pursuing her. Anyone who's bold enough to do that will definitely possess an astonishing background. If you get too close to her, it'll be detrimental to you. Han Exine made his way over to Jian Chen's side and said sincerely, I understand. Thank you for your reminder, sir. Jian Chen clasped his fist towards Han Exine. After watching Han Exine leave, he returned to his dwelling. Due to the Soaring Clouds Peak being sealed off, none of the Radiant Saint Masters gathered outside the mountain managed to set foot there. However, Han Exine's actions naturally offended many people. He displeased many powerful Radiant Saint Masters. What haughtiness! The Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak actually dares to shut the door on us. This Han Exine seems to be from the Han family of the eastern region. He's only a nameless member of the Han family. There might not be a lot of people in the Han family who even know about his existence. The Radiant Saint Masters all dispersed as they discussed. Before long, the Soaring Clouds Peak had regained its peace. Afterwards, Jian Chen entered a long period of seclusion. Apart from going to the mountain top to listen to Han Exine's lessons of passing on the laws of the hallowed, he spent the rest of his time in his dwelling cultivating. He had benefited quite a lot from his interaction with Donglin Yanxue. It allowed him to gain a new understanding of Radiant Saint Force. He needed time to tidy through it all. Bai Yu remained the same as before, basically coming to Jian Chen's dwelling every single day to hear about Jian Chen's comprehension of the laws of the hallowed. Jian Chen, on the other hand, slowed down. He would only spend an hour a day explaining his comprehension of the laws of the hallowed, but even with that being the case, Bai Yu would spend several hours comprehending after each session. As a result, in just half a month, Bai Yu finally broke through in her dwelling on a night with the full moon. She successfully comprehended the laws of the hallowed with her two-colored soul core, becoming a hallowed saint master. Not only did Bai Yu's breakthrough alarm Han Exine, but it also alarmed the sacred hall. On the next day, an elder arrived on the Soaring Clouds Peak, taking Bai Yu into the sacred hall to cultivate. At the same time, the matter spread across the entire Radiant Saint Hall, making all the disciples remember Bai Yu's name. Although there were people who became hallowed saint masters with just a two-colored soul core in the Radiant Saint Hall, they were almost mythical existences. Every single one of them would receive much support from the Radiant Saint Hall, where they would become the elites among the elites. As a matter of fact, without any exaggeration, once someone became a hallowed saint master with a two-colored soul core, their status in the Radiant Saint Hall would almost be able to rival the 5 candidates. After Bai Yu entered the sacred hall, Xuefeng became completely downhearted. He had liked Bai Yu since a long time ago, and he was confident about making her fall in love with him. Not only was he a Radiant Saint Master with a 3-colored soul core, but he was also a 5-star genius. He experienced a natural sense of supremacy over Bai Yu, who was only a 1-star genius. However, all of this changed when Bai Yu comprehended the laws of the hallowed and was personally taken into the sacred hall by an elder. Right when Bai Yu's matter settled down, Jian Chen finally took action as well. He made many copies of the conversation between Donglin Yanxue and the Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak before silently spreading them around. Basically, all the Radiant Saint Masters believed that Jian Chen had only managed to beat Wenqing because of Gongjing Xian's secret arrangements. That way, he could become the final victor and make a name for himself. In exchange, he would give the 1,000-leaf lotus he won to Gongjing Xian. However, after Jian Chen was victorious, he broke off his end of the secret deal he had established with Gongjing Xian, giving the 1,000-leaf lotus to Donglin Yanxue instead. As a result, not only did he closen his relationship with her, but he even gained her protection, where Gongjing Xian could do nothing to him. Because of this, Jian Chen had a very poor reputation in the Radiant Saint Hall. Basically everyone would talk about Chongyang in disdain and scorn. It destroyed Jian Chen's reputation. Now that the contents of the crystal were made public, the truth that was the exact opposite of what everyone believed naturally spread without any attempts to suppress it. It immediately led to quite an uproar, where even a few more powerful Radiant Saint Masters began to pay attention to this matter. If it was only a matter between two weaker Radiant Saint Masters, it would not have caused such a disturbance. More importantly, it directly pulled an esteemed candidate into the matter as well. Just when Gongjing Xian was about to enter seclusion for the final spurt, he received the news as well. His face immediately became extremely ugly as heavy killing intent filled his eyes. Pay close attention to Chongyang. Once he leaves the Radiant Saint Hall, immediately contact the people in the clan to get rid of him, Gongjing Xian said frigidly. Yes, young master. I will contact the clan immediately, a violet-robed guard said politely from behind Gongjing Xian. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. During that time, Jian Chen did not take a single step away from the soaring cloud's peak. He remained holed up there, basically spending all his time on cultivation. As Bai Yu could not interrupt him anymore, Jian Chen finally gained some peace. On this day, Jian Chen suddenly roused from his cultivation. He looked at the sky before making his way out of his dwelling. He stared at the distant horizon. A gate had suddenly appeared in the protective formation around the Radiant Saint Hall in the distance, and afterwards, a figure directly entered the territory of the Radiant Saint Hall. The figure gave off an astonishing presence, enough to make the mountains tremble as all the vegetation was squashed down as if they were bowing in submission. The person strolled through the air and crossed a huge distance in a single instance. In just a single step, he arrived within the Radiant Saint Hall that stood above the clouds. Jian Chen became stern when he saw this person. He felt an ill omen. It seemed like this person's arrival was related to him. At this moment, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall with supreme authority and the 8 vice leaders were all gathered within a grand discussion room on the highest floor of the sacred hall. They were all stern. A gray-robed middle-aged man stood with his hands behind his back in the center of the room. He looked at the leader of the Radiant Saint Master, who sat on a throne with great composure. I've only come to pass on a thought that we've all agreed on over there. We hope your Radiant Saint Hall can open its gates and allow us to search as we wish, unlike before, locking the door in our face, the gray-robed man said. That will be impossible. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall shone with holy light as he declined without any hesitation at all. The man smiled indifferently. Leader, I think you also know that our actions are only to find Jian Chen. We will never do anything that gets in the way of the interests of your Radiant Saint Palace. You must cooperate. In reality, it's not just your Radiant Saint Hall. We've even sent people to all the other peak organizations on the desolate plain so that they can open their gates and allow us to find Jian Chen. Jian Chen possesses the Anata Tower, which belongs to the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. Our actions are actually only a service to the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng, to share the burden with Her Majesty Exin. If you don't cooperate, wouldn't that be making things difficult for Her Majesty Exin? The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall could not help but become stern when Exin was mentioned. The First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng was in existence only second to Grand Primes, one of the handful of supreme experts of the Saints' world. Her name had a huge influence on the peak organizations across the Saints' world. Our Radiant Saint Hall represents Radiant Saint Masters. As a fighter, Jian Chen could be hiding anywhere on the desolate plain but not our Radiant Saint Hall. As a result, it's impossible for him to be here, the leader said sternly. Jian Chen is far more complicated than you've imagined him to be. So many of us, peak experts, have tried to detect his traces and whereabouts through various secret techniques, but we found nothing in the end. He has such impressive means of staying hidden that even if he did hide in your territory, you would not be able to find him. Now, we've basically flipped through the entire desolate plain. Apart from the peak clans on the desolate plain, we haven't missed a single corner. We all have people stationed in outer space and the teleportation formations across plains on the desolate plain as well. As a result, it's impossible for Jian Chen to escape. We can already determine that Jian Chen is hiding in a peak organization. The gray-robed man stared at the leader with shining eyes as he waited for the leader's reply. After a moment of thought, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall said with a heavy heart, since it's serving the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng, our Radiant Saint Hall will obviously be more than willing. Chapter 2266. Quite the disturbance if that's the case. Thank you for your cooperation. Farewell. The gray-robed man clasped his fist and left. These people have gone too far. Do they really think they're sovereigns of the world, where they can act as they wish on the desolate plain? Humph, the desolate plain is our territory, yet we're supposed to let these outsiders run around fearless and basically upheave the entire plain. It's humiliating as a native organization of the desolate plain. And even worse, they actually want us to open our doors and let them search as they wish. Humph, what kind of place do they think the Radiant Saint Hall is? Although our Radiant Saint Hall has declined, we're still a peak organization that had a grand exalt in the past. How can we listen to the orders of those outsiders? Those outsiders will stop at nothing. The 8 vice leaders all snarled with righteous indignation after the gray-robed man had left. All of their expressions were horrible and utterly sunken. Sigh. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall exhaled gently. His voice was filled with powerlessness. He said steadily, "These outsiders have come under the name of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. Let alone our Radiant Saint Hall, but there's probably no one from the other major organizations on the desolate plain who are bold enough to turn them down. Even without considering offending the Heavenly Palace of Bishing when you reject them, they'll start believing you're purposefully protecting Jian Chen. Some of them with ulterior motives will even label you as wanting to take the Anata Tower all for yourself. Once that happens, the consequences will be far worse. Deactivate the protective formation and let the outsiders search our Radiant Saint Hall. However, we can't let them act as they wish. As a result, including me, no one is to enter seclusion. At the same time, have all the elders pay close attention to the outsiders. Once they cross the line in our Radiant Saint Hall, immediately punish them according to our rules. We can let them in and look for Jian Chen, but we cannot let them act recklessly." "Yes, leader," replied the 8 vice leaders. After a moment of thought, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall continued, "The 3 great treasures of the Anata Grand Exalt are the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, the Anata Tower, and the Fortune Jade Pedestal. Since the Anata Tower is with Jian Chen, once an organization finds Jian Chen, they'll obtain the Anata Tower, and then they'll offer it up to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. This will be a great merit. At the same time, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for our Radiant Saint Hall as well." The leader continued, "In all these years, it has been far, far too long since we've had any late God King disciples due to that mysterious expert. As a result, the lords of various peaks who could break through were all forced to suppress their cultivation to mid-God King. Even the disciples who were unable to suppress their cultivation were forced to leave the Radiant Saint Hall in the end, hiding away all by themselves. Moreover, not a single one of them have returned so far. Who knows whether they're still alive or not? If this lasts over a prolonged period of time, our Radiant Saint Hall will definitely wane in strength. As a result, we must search for the Anata Tower with all of our efforts as well. If we can find it first, we won't have any need to fear that mysterious expert anymore." The eyes of the 8 vice leaders all lit up from that. They said, "That's right. Once we obtain the Anata Tower, we'll be able to ask the First Majesty to take action personally and kill that mysterious expert." The First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing is one of the most terrifying figures in the world. Back then, the Flame Reverend Grand Prime, who was also known as one of the most powerful below Grand Exalt, had fled across the entire Saints' world while being hunted down by the First Majesty. In the end, he was forced to hide. That mysterious expert who has been specifically targeting our Radiant God Kings may be very powerful, but can he be more powerful than the Flame Reverend Grand Prime? This might be an opportunity for our Radiant Saint Hall. "Leader, it's best if I personally head out and see if I can find Jian Chen's traces. I want to search for Jian Chen as well. After all, he has a direct correlation with our Radiant Saint Hall's fate." 2 vice leaders immediately asked for permission to search for Jian Chen. Even though all of them knew it would not be easy to find Jian Chen since he could avoid so many peak experts of the Saints' world, they still could not help but want to try their luck. On that day, all the protective formations around the Radiant Saint Hall vanished, exposing every inch of the place to the public. Without the formations, the powerful senses of the outsider's souls immediately came sweeping in. They enveloped the entire Radiant Saint Hall with great pressure, without missing a single corner at all. They scoured all the mountains of the Radiant Saint Hall. Even the secret rooms deep underground were not missed. On that day, basically no disciples of the Radiant Saint Hall ventured out. Under the restraints of their peak lords, they all stayed on their respective mountains. They could feel the powerful senses moving across them, immediately causing many of the Radiant Saint Masters who had no idea what was going on to tremble in fear and unease. Jian Chen sat on a rock outside his dwelling. He also clearly sensed the powerful senses sweep past him, causing his heart to grow heavy. Now that the Radiant Saint Hall had opened its gates to outsiders, Jian Chen truly felt endangered. Fortunately, I have Senior Mo Tianyun's mask. As long as I have it, I don't have to worry about being exposed by the senses of those experts. Even if they were standing before me, they probably would not be able to tell what my true appearance was. But there is nothing perfect in the world, so if they filter through the people one by one, they'll discover problems with me sooner or later. I will be exposed one day. My main intentions of coming to the Radiant Saint Hall is to enter the Tower of Radiance and obtain the cultivation methods left behind by past experts. As a result, I cannot leave here before I enter the Tower of Radiance, or it would have all been for nothing, thought Jian Chen. He knew that he only had one chance to enter the Tower of Radiance. Once his identity was exposed, it would become impossible to hide his martial soul force as well. He would immediately become an enemy of the Radiant Saint Hall, making it impossible for him to enter the Radiant Saint Hall. Deactivate the formation. All disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak will be inspected. At this moment, someone called out coldly from beyond the Soaring Clouds Peak. 2 violet-robed guards and a few outsiders arrived near the Soaring Clouds Peak, hovering in the sky silently. Jian Chen looked at the people from his rock. Even though he maintained a facade and only appeared slightly confused, his heart grew heavier. Xuefeng, Chongyang, come to me. At this moment, Han Xian's voice rang out from the top of the mountain. Afterwards, the formation around the Soaring Clouds Peak gradually vanished as well. Jian Chen immediately stood up from the rock and flew towards the top of the mountain. Very soon, he arrived on the mountain top. He discovered that Han Xian was conversing with the 2 violet-robed guards, while Xuefeng was already standing behind Han Xian. Under the orders of the leader of our sacred hall, all disciples, including the Peak Lords, must be inspected, a guard said to Han Xian. Han Xian nodded. I've already received the message from the elders. We will definitely cooperate. The violet-robed guard nodded before taking out a mirror and directing it at Han Xian. Immediately, a resplendent stream of light shot out and enveloped Han Xian completely. The mirror was extraordinary. It could pierce through illusions and reveal the truth. Through it, all disguises would be rendered useless. Jian Chen could clearly sense that the powerful senses of the soul gathered in the air of the Radiant Saint Hall were all gathered on the mirror when the light enveloped Han Xian. All right, there are no problems. Next. Very soon, the light from the mirror vanished, and the violet-robed guard directed it towards Xuefeng. The same process happened. In the end, it was Jian Chen's turn. Jian Chen knew that there were many experts observing everything that happened here, so he remained indifferent and undertook the inspection of the mirror calmly. He showed no flaws in his facade at all. The mask from Mo Tianyun was even enough to trick so many peak experts, so he refused to believe a mere mirror would be able to expose his true identity. There are no problems. Let's go to the next mountain. Very soon, the light subsided, and the violet-robed guard stowed the mirror away. He left with the group of people. Clearly, the mirror was useless against Mo Tianyun's mask. There was not just a single group like this. Whether it was the interior mountains or the exterior mountains, there were over a dozen of these groups that ventured from mountain to mountain with similar mirrors and a few outsiders. Everyone, ranging from peak lords to newly accepted disciples, was inspected with the mirror. Sigh. This god king called Jian Chen has caused quite the disturbance. The entire desolate plain has lost its peace because of him. Han Xian stood on the top of the mountain and sighed emotionally when he watched the group leave. Chapter 2267. Leaving the Radiant Saint Hall after hearing Han Xian's words, Xuefeng nodded in agreement. He could not help but show admiration. This senior Jian Chen really is impressive. It's rumored that he's only a god king, and he has already offended the famed solitary sword ancestor and heavenly king of azure brilliance. The 2 experts had hunted him down, yet he still survived until now. Senior Jian Chen is also able to remain hidden against so many foreign peak experts who have to the desolate plain. Probably only Senior Jian Chen can achieve something so astonishing among all the god kings in the saints' world. After more than a year of build-up, the matters regarding Jian Chen had ceased to be any kind of secret. It had already become widespread and known by all. Naturally, Xuefeng had learnt of this from elsewhere as well. Jian Chen felt extremely strange when he heard Xuefeng's praise and how Xuefeng referred to him as senior. He immediately glanced at Xuefeng in an extremely strange manner. Xuefeng seemed to sense Jian Chen's gaze, so his face immediately darkened, and he glanced back at Jian Chen coldly. He snorted icily before leaving. Who knows how he would feel once he discovered that the Chongyang beside him was the senior Jian Chen he was talking about. After leaving the mountain top, Jian Chen returned to his dwelling. He was in no mood to continue cultivating now. He sat on the cold hard ground as he sank into his thoughts. Not only did the Radiant Saint Hall open its gates now, but it had even sent its disciples to cooperate with the outsiders, turning over every pebble of the mountains to look for him. This was not good news for Jian Chen. Moreover, he knew that the inspection today was only a start. As time went on, the searching would become stricter and stricter. It might even end up becoming flawless. Even though he had Mo Tianyun's mask, which could hide him from most treasures and secret techniques, the mask was not all-powerful. Once he revealed a tiny hole in his story, exposure would await him. It looks like it's no longer suitable for me to remain in the Radiant Saint Hall. It might be safer out there, Jian Chen thought. There were around 2 years left before the competition between the candidates. He had to last those 2 years no matter what. Once he entered the Tower of Radiance and got what he needed, it would not matter even if his identity was exposed. The next morning, a group of violet-robed guards flew down from the sacred hall that stood above the clouds before scattering towards the various mountains. They all bore a crystal containing information that they passed to the peak lords, who then passed it down to their disciples. Jian Chen received a crystal from Han Xian. Jian Chen silently viewed the thumb-sized crystal in his hand and checked the contents. As expected, everything in the crystal was information about himself. It was extremely detailed, describing his special traits, weapons used, laws comprehended, and various battle skills and secret techniques grasped. Without any exaggeration, everything that Jian Chen had exposed in the Neptunian Divine Palace was recorded within the crystal. Nothing was missing. There was even some description regarding his profound sword qi. It was just unclear. The crystal was signed off as an announcement from the Radiant Saint Hall. It also urged on all the Radiant Saint Masters in the Radiant Saint Hall to take part in the search for Jian Chen. Clearly, the Radiant Saint Hall also wanted to join in on the search for Jian Chen. Jian Chen's eyes shone brightly as he clutched the crystal. He had just been thinking about the reasons he could use to leave the Radiant Saint Hall. The crystal had come at a perfect time. Afterwards, Jian Chen arrived on the top of the soaring clouds peak with the crystal and found Han Xian. Xuefeng, it's already extremely impressive that you're able to control Radiant Saint Force to such a degree. Don't always compare yourself to your junior brother Chongyang. Your junior brother's cultivation is indeed weaker than yours, but he is quite talented in the control and grasp over Radiant Saint Force. Not everyone can do that. Currently, Han Xian sat on a large rock as he explained the usages of Radiant Saint Force to Xuefeng. When Jian Chen arrived, Han Xian stopped and looked at Jian Chen. Immediately, he smiled amiably and asked, "Chongyang, are you looking for anything?" Xuefeng also discovered Jian Chen's arrival, and his eyes immediately turned cold. Jian Chen clasped his fist towards Han Xian and said, "Sir, I want to leave the mountains for some time and see whether I can find Jian Chen." "Humph. You overestimate yourself. Why don't you take a good look at yourself first before you think about looking for Senior Jian Chen? Senior Jian Chen is a god king. Even if you really do come across him out of chance, it'll be impossible for you to survive." Xuefeng rebuked coldly before Han Xian could say anything. "Xuefeng." Han Xian's face sank slightly, and he immediately called out to get Xuefeng to shut up obediently. Then he looked at Jian Chen gently and shook his head. "Chongyang, allow me to persuade you otherwise and cultivate on the soaring clouds peak so that you can become a hallowed saint master when you have a two-colored soul core like your junior sister. Just don't get involved with the search for Jian Chen. Even all the peak experts can't find any trace of his Jian Chen, so how is it possible for you to find him easily? If you get involved, it'll just be a waste of time." "Sir, looking for Jian Chen is only one of the reasons. The other reason is that I want to go out and have a look. I can also use it as an opportunity to train myself," said Jian Chen. After a moment of thought, Han Xian ended up nodding in agreement. "All right. Since you're determined, I won't stop you." Chongyang, you have to remember to wear the attire of a disciple from the Radiant Saint Hall at all times outside. The desolate plain is not peaceful. With your current cultivation, it'll be extremely dangerous, so the uniform will be the best thing to keep you safe. After all, our Radiant Saint Hall is one of the peak organizations on the desolate plain. Apart from the martial soul lineage, our Radiant Saint Hall isn't on bad terms with anyone, so it is rare for anyone to be bold enough to attack disciples of the Radiant Saint Hall. This is the medallion for a disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Take the medallion to the Foreign Affairs Hall and register yourself. Afterwards, you can leave the Radiant Saint Hall. And take this jade talisman with you. If you come across any danger or problems, crush it immediately, and I'll hurry over as quickly as I can. Han Xian warned Jian Chen repeatedly before letting him leave. Afterwards, Jian Chen went to the Foreign Affairs Hall and registered his leave with the medallion. Then he underwent various identity tests before leaving the Radiant Saint Hall all by himself. Chapter 2268. The last fragment. The Saints' world had a total of 49 great plains and 81 great planets. The 49 plains were actually 49 tremendous landmasses that hovered in space, where each one was larger than any of the 81 great planets. Among the 49 plains, there were 7 sacred plains. Every single one of them possessed a grand exalt. Although grand exalts were still grand primes, they had reached the limits of grand prime. They had comprehended at least a single law to completion, allowing them to become existences akin to the laws, where they could interfere with the operation of the laws and grasp the world with a single thought. As a result, if a grand exalt spent a long time cultivating on a plane, the laws there would be influenced by the grand prime, leading it to become much simpler and clearer. It would become several times easier for people to comprehend the laws of the world. This was how the 7 sacred plains of the Saints' world gained their name. The Prosper Plain was one of the 7 sacred plains. It was where the Anata Grand Prime of the 7 Grand Exalts spent most of her time cultivating. Meanwhile, the Anata Grand Prime's residency, the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, was located at the very center. That was also the holiest place on the entire Prosper Plain. It was a place revered by all. Even though there were many peak organizations and supreme experts on the Prosper Plain, the last organization they would want to provoke or offend would naturally be the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. Although the 7 Grand Exalts had either died or suffered injuries from the battle in the past, where even the Anata Grand Prime was rumored to have died many years ago, as long as the Heavenly Palace of Bishing possessed Exin, it would be able to remain standing in the Saints' world and would continue to strike awe in everyone's hearts. It was also because of Exin that the various experts on the Prosper Plain dared not act up. The majestic Heavenly Palace of Bishing sat at the center of the Prosper Plain. It gave off a supreme presence at all times, like an ancient beast crouching there quietly. A group of golden-armored divine guards stood there silently like statues. They never moved, protecting the Heavenly Palace of Bishing with loyalty. An old woman, fatigued from travel, stood near the entrance of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. She stood there politely with her head lowered. She had already stood there for a very long time, such that a thin layer of dust had formed on her clothes. Su Ran, the 8th Majesty wants me to tell you that you can't see the 1st Majesty. If you keep waiting here, it'll just be a waste of your time and effort. A divine general in golden armor walked out and said to the old woman with mixed feelings, I really have something extremely important to report to the 1st Majesty. If the 1st Majesty is unwilling to see someone as insignificant as me, then can I see the 8th Majesty? Su Ran asked bitterly. The divine general sighed gently when he saw how persistent Su Ran was. He said, then let me pass on the message. Whether the 8th Majesty wishes to see you or not will be up to luck. With that, the divine general made his way back into the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. However, just when he had turned around, he was suddenly taken aback. A woman in a red dress who seemed to be in her 20s slowly made her way over. The woman was extremely beautiful, enough to outshine the moon. She strode over without giving off any presence at all. She seemed just like a mortal. However, the divine general immediately showed respect when he saw the woman. He clasped his fist and bowed in a hurry. Greetings to the 8th Majesty. Junior Su Ran greets the 8th Majesty. Su Ran also bowed towards the woman in red with mixed feelings. The woman in red was the 8th Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, Bai Rong. You can go, Bai Rong said to the divine general. She spoke with a very soft, warm, and pleasant voice. Yes, Eighth Majesty. The divine general bowed politely and quickly vanished within the heavenly palace of Bishing. Bai Rong made her way towards Su Ran with gentle steps. She looked at Su Ran's face that had grown unfamiliar with age. She could still vaguely remember the beautiful, overcautious, and slightly naive little girl she had first seen several million years ago. It made Bai Rong sigh deeply. Bai Rong stared at Su Ran for a while before saying gently, "Su Ran, I already know why you've come. We've learnt about Master's Tower very long ago. This isn't something you should be concerned about, so just forget about it. Grandmaster's Anata Tower is with a junior called Jian Chen. Jian Chen's strength is weak. If he continues to hold on to the Anata Tower, it can be taken away at any other time. So please take back the Anata Tower as soon as possible, Eighth Majesty," Su Ran pleaded. Bai Rong sighed gently. "Master has orders for us not to interfere with this matter. As a result, let alone me, even if you find first senior sister, it'll be pointless." "What? Does that mean that the Grandmaster? The Grandmaster? He's still. Su Ran immediately became stunned when he heard Bai Rong mention her master. She was in emotional turmoil. "Do you understand now? This matter isn't something that we disciples can interfere with." Bai Rong looked at Su Ran deeply. She said no more, turning around and leaving. She vanished back into the heavenly palace of Bishing. "Grandmaster is still alive. Grandmaster is actually still alive." Bai Rong's words echoed through Su Ran's head constantly. She was so shocked that she struggled to calm herself. At the same time, a hazy figure shrouded by a dense layer of light from laws sat in outer space. The laws of the world were clearly presented about him, interweaving together into the truth of the world. The laws themselves seemed to be booming out. It was as if the person had become the laws themselves and represented the laws of the world, the supreme will of the universe. Disciple Exin greets Master. At this moment, a beautiful woman in white clothes appeared silently before the figure shrouded in light. She clasped her fist in respect. The woman was the First Majesty, Exin. She was the person who had forcefully barged through the formations of the Neptunian Divine Palace and destroyed the clone of the Samsaric immortal Exalt. She was also the person who had struck awe in all the experts of the Saints' world, allowing the heavenly palace of Bishing to remain standing all this time. "Master, I found Senior Ancient Path's 1 spiritual soul and 5 animal souls," said Exin. At the same time, several specks of light flew out from her hand. These specks of light varied in sizes. Some were like souls, some were like blurry consciousnesses, and others were imprints. These specks of light were directed into the hand of the figure surrounded by light. He looked at the soul fragments and said, "Only a single spiritual soul remains out of Ancient Path's 3 spiritual souls and 7 animal souls. Once they are all brought together, I'll be able to rebuild Ancient Path's soul." Chapter 2269, The Mysterious Rock 1. "Master, may I ask where Senior Ancient Path's last spiritual soul is?" the First Majesty asked politely. The figure shrouded in light fell silent. However, the light around him surged, becoming extremely blinding like a sun. At that moment, he seemed to have become the world, wielding the laws of the world, turning into the greatest will of the universe. With a single glance, he was able to see the source of the world and peer into both the past and the future. There seemed to be no secrets across the vast universe in his eyes. The last spiritual soul possesses a sliver of power from Ancient Path's will. Under the protection of this power, even grand exalts will struggle to find him, the figure shrouded in light said a while later. His voice contained all the sounds of the universe, making it impossible to discern his gender. "Master, even you are unable to find the last spiritual soul of Senior Ancient Paths? Once I fully recover my cultivation, finding the last spiritual soul will be nothing difficult." The War Dragon Empire happened to be one of the 5 everlasting empires on the desolate plain. They possessed strength equal to the Radiant Saint Hall and was also a peak organization of the desolate plain. Jian Chen currently sat in an inconspicuous location within an inn that was not particularly impressive in the revered imperial capital of the War Dragon Empire. He was in the white robes that represented his status as a Radiant Saint Master, and he ordered some small dishes. He drank and ate at leisure. The inn was not large, so it had been filled since long ago. Noisy and clamorous sounds rang out from every corner of the inn. A man's wealth is his own ruin by causing the greed of others. I've investigated this person called Jian Chen thoroughly. It's said that he's very powerful, where he made a name for himself in the Neptunian Divine Palace. He has extremely astonishing battle prowess, enough to make it into the rankings of the God King's throne. It's just a pity that the Anata Tower has doomed him. Now that the entire desolate plain has been sealed off, Jian Chen is doomed as long as he's still here. I just wonder how much longer he can hide for. It'll happen soon. As long as Jian Chen is still on the desolate plain, he'll be discovered before long. Those foreign organizations are searching the desolate plain with more and more care now. But I need to say that Jian Chen sure knows how to hide. He's able to hide even until now, away from the close search of so many peak experts. What do you think the Anata Tower is? How can a mere God King possess something like that? If Jian Chen doesn't hand over the Anata Tower, he'll definitely suffer an extremely miserable fate. He has made so many peak experts set out, so he's probably already caused them much displeasure. His fate won't be great even if he hands over the Anata Tower willingly, I think. Cultivators of various cultivation levels in the inn discussed the topic of Jian Chen loudly with great interest. In reality, similar discussions were not limited to this tiny inn. It was present everywhere across the desolate plain. Not only did all the cultivators on the desolate plain remember Jian Chen's name, but it had also become the topic of casual conversation for everyone. Jian Chen sat there quietly in his white robes. He eavesdropped on the various conversations, and he did not become perturbed at all. He remained calm the entire time. A while later, Jian Chen tossed some medium-quality divine crystals onto the table and left. He had already been to many places during the days he had come out. He had gained a rough understanding of the situation of the desolate plain. What pained him the most was the fact that basically all the teleportation formations across plains were closed down. Without a great enough status, it was impossible to take a teleportation formation off the desolate plain. Even outer space around the desolate plain had been sealed up by the various peak organizations, stopping the operation of all the spaceships. People were only allowed in but not out. Moreover, many small groups patrolled every inch of the desolate plain. These groups all possessed secret treasures that could see through disguises. They would test everyone that they passed by, and once someone seemed suspicious, they would be captured without any hesitation. From the very beginning, there were naturally many cultivators who wanted to conceal their identities. They began to resist as much as they could, or they even directly killed off the groups they came across. However, these people would basically be instantaneously suppressed the moment they started fighting. This was because peak experts would be paying attention to these patrolling groups at all times. It was also because of that these groups became more and more fearless, allowing them to run amok. Even Jian Chen had been stopped and questioned by several patrolling groups. However, as Jian Chen was a disciple of the Radiant Saint Master, the groups only inspected his identity and did not make too much trouble for him. Very clearly, these people were unwilling to go overboard with any of the peak organizations on the desolate plain. After leaving the inn, Jian Chen strolled through the busy streets. He clutched the crystal that contained the detailed information about himself and looked around as if he was looking for Jian Chen as he made his way out of the imperial capital. Very soon, Jian Chen arrived at the city gates. He shook his head in disappointment and murmured, "It's full of people here. It looks like finding Jian Chen really isn't easy. I better go to the next city to try my luck." As he said that, Jian Chen stowed the crystal away and left with Radiant Saint force. Two middle-aged men followed him and walked over steadily from behind Jian Chen. They looked at the direction which Jian Chen had vanished off into as they could not help but sneer. This Chongyang is so foolish that he is cute like a child. He only has a one-colored soul core, yet he still wants to find Jian Chen. He's dreaming. He is indeed far too naive. Anyway, he has finally left Dragon City. Let's follow him. Once he's far away enough, we'll do it immediately. I heard that this Chongyang has extremely impressive talent. It's a pity that he recklessly offended young Master Xian. He won't have much time left. The two middle-aged men communicate secretly before slowly rising up into the sky. They hurried off in Jian Chen's direction at a steady pace. At this moment, Jian Chen had arrived several million kilometers from the imperial capital of the War Dragon Empire. Just as he flew over a stinking swamp, the two middle-aged men silently appeared and approached Jian Chen from in front and behind. "Who are you?" Jian Chen immediately became alarmed. "You must be Chongyang, right? You don't need to know who we are. All you need to know is that you're going to be dead very soon. Chongyang, who told you to offend young Master Xin? There is only death for you once you've offended young Master Xin. The two middle-aged men sneered. They looked at Jian Chen like they were looking at an ant. Chapter 2270, The Mysterious Rock, 2. So you were sent by Gongjing Xian. Tell me, what has Gongjing Xian offered you? I'll give you 10 times the amount. Jian Chen remained composed and said calmly, You're working for Gongjing Xian for the various cultivation resources he's offering. I can give you whatever Gongjing Xian can give you, such as this divine hall. With a flip of his hand, a hand-sized divine hall appeared from his space ring. The two middle-aged men who had come to kill Jian Chen never took him seriously from the beginning. However, when they saw the divine hall in Jian Chen's hand, their eyes narrowed as they became overjoyed. 9th grade of the truth tier. It's actually at the 9th grade of the truth tier. You actually have a treasure like that on you? The two middle-aged men were extremely surprised. The divine hall was something they could not resist. Greed immediately filled their eyes as they lunged at Jian Chen as quickly as they could. They wanted to take the divine hall for themselves. Jian Chen's lips could not help but curl up into an undetectable sneer as he watched the two middle-aged men rush towards the divine hall. In the next moment, a pair of hands suddenly extended out from the divine hall, reaching towards the two of them with speed that seemed indescribable to the middle-aged men. The sudden occurrence made the expressions of both men change. However, it was already too late. The two hands grabbed their necks with lightning speed, and under their horrified gazes, it forcefully wrenched them into the divine hall. Gongjing Xian sure does have a high opinion of me. He actually sent 2 early god kings to deal with me, who's supposed to only be equivalent to a receival fighter, Jian Chen sneered as he looked at the divine hall in his hand. Afterwards he said to the structure, Heya, I'll leave the 2 of them to you. Jian Chen's voice sounded in the divine hall clearly. Yes, master. Heya responded politely from within the divine hall. Master, I feel like I'm going to break through soon, Heya said after a slight pause. You're going to break through? This soon? Jian Chen was surprised. Once Heya broke through, he would directly reach the primordial realm. A primordial realm expert had once been an indomitable existence in his eyes. Now, one of his retainers was about to become a primordial realm expert, which amazed Jian Chen. It's all because of Master's Flower of Ways. If it were not for the Flower of Ways and the various heavenly resources, I would have never touched on the boundary of the primordial realm so soon, Heya said in deep gratitude. After a moment of consideration, Jian Chen said, The divine hall can't endure the disturbance you make when you break through. The situation is special right now. It's not a good time to break through. Heya, suppress your breakthrough temporarily. Yes, master. Afterwards, Jian Chen checked the surroundings. After he discovered that he had left no traces behind, he was about to leave. But at this moment, an extremely vague and mysterious presence appeared from the swamp below him. The presence was extremely weak and vague. If it were not for the fact that Jian Chen's soul had fused with a sliver of true chaotic force, making it extremely powerful and sensitive, he would not have been able to sense the mysterious presence at all. This was because it was just too vague, so vague that even the senses of primordial realm souls would not be able to discover it. Jian Chen suddenly looked at the swamp below him, and after a moment of hesitation, he dived in. A layer of milky white light formed a white, airtight barrier around him. The water and mud around him were pushed aside by radiant saint force along the way, allowing Jian Chen to dive in. As he dived deeper and deeper, Jian Chen became more and more astonished. The swamp was far deeper than he had imagined it to be. He felt that he had dived several dozen kilometers at the very least, but he still had not reached the bottom. The ordinary swamp seemed to lead straight into the ground. And the deeper he dived, the greater the pressure in the surroundings became. In the end, Jian Chen was unable to keep up the barrier with radiant saint force alone, so he just dispersed all the radiant saint force. He did not use any energy at all, using his body to endure the pressure from the depths. In the end, after who knows how long, Jian Chen dived several tens of thousand kilometers and finally hit solid ground. He arrived at the very depths of the swamp. There was a layer of extremely tough rock at the bottom of the swamp. Jian Chen sensed around with his soul and finally found the thing responsible for the mysterious presence. It was actually a rock 4 feet wide. Jian Chen expanded the senses of his soul in an attempt to investigate the contents of the rock. However, to his surprise, the senses of his soul told him the rock that was clearly right in front of him did not exist. It can only be discovered with the naked eye. This rock is not simple. Jian Chen rubbed the rock gently. Afterwards, he shot out a strand of sword qi from his fingertip, scraping off a thin layer of powder from the surface of the rock. Afterwards, he took out the divine hall from his space ring and spread the powder on it. He thought, this powder should be able to conceal the divine hall and prevent people from finding it with the senses of their souls. Very soon, the tiny divine hall was covered with a thick layer of powder. Afterwards, with a thought, Jian Chen vanished along with the rock. Only the divine hall covered in rock powder stood at the bottom of the swamp quietly. Jian Chen silently appeared within the divine hall with the rock. He cleaned off the dust around the rock and began to study it carefully. The rock was cubical, 4 feet in length, width, and depth. It was dark red and extremely tough. Even with Jian Chen's current strength, he was unable to shatter it. From the surface it seemed ordinary. Apart from being tough and undetectable with the senses of the soul, it did not stand out in any way. It did not even give off any pulses of energy. However, Jian Chen was able to discover slivers of extremely obscure and mysterious presences radiating from the rock thanks to the extraordinary senses of his soul. He believed that no one else aside from himself could sense this presence. That even included the peak experts. "Heya, do you recognize this?" Jian Chen called Heya over to identify the rock. But very soon, Heya shook his head. He had never seen or heard of a wondrous rock like this. Jian Chen stared at the rock in thought for a while before making up his mind in the end. Sword qi flashed from the tip of his finger as he cut off a thin layer of rock with quite the effort. He studied it carefully in his hand. Chapter 2271. Fortune Jade. The rock was extremely strange. It did not seem to stand out at all when observed with the naked eye, and the senses of the soul were completely useless against it. As a result, Jian Chen secretly used his soul that had fused with chaotic force to closely observe the tiny slice of rock in his hand. Very soon, he discovered in great surprise that a minuscule amount of the mysterious presence existed within the rock slice. At that moment, the remaining presence vanished at an extremely gradually rate. When the presence remaining reached a certain amount, Jian Chen discovered that he could vaguely sense the rock slice with his soul. The rock slice was no longer invisible to the senses of the soul. I see. The reason why the rock can avoid being detected by the soul is not because of how special the rock is itself. It's all because of the mysterious presence that has permeated the rock. As soon as I sliced away this piece of rock, the mysterious presence began to vanish gradually. It looks like the origins of this mysterious presence is hidden within the rock, Jian Chen thought to himself. The light in his eyes flickered as he immediately got to work, chipping away at the rock. However, it was just too tough. The closer he got to the center, the tougher it became. Towards the end, Jian Chen was only able to chip it away at an extremely slow rate even when using his full strength. Jian Chen frowned at the sight of this. Since he knew the rock was not as extraordinary as he had imagined it to be, it also meant that the powder he spread on the divine hall would not be able to keep the structure hidden for long. Once the powder became useless, the peak experts who had gathered on the desolate plain would be able to discover the divine hall he had hidden at the bottom of the swamp easily. There's not much time left. Jian Chen scraped off some new powder and spread it on the divine hall again. Afterwards, he drew the 9-star sword of heavenly ways without any hesitation and began to chip away at the rock with careful control over the sword. A day later, Jian Chen finally reached the very center of the rock after replacing the powder on the divine hall several times. Immediately, an extremely resplendent light burst out. It was blinding and dazzling, like the most beautiful color in the world. Anyone who saw the light would become entranced by it. Along with the resplendent light, a light presence that could focus the souls of people expanded as well. It resonated with the laws of the world, causing them to tremble as if it was invoking the endless mysteries of the universe. Jian Chen became completely stunned with the appearance of the somewhat familiar light. He stared at the shining jade within the rock in a daze as intense joy and disbelief filled his eyes. It's Fortune Jade. It's actually Fortune Jade. Jian Chen murmured blankly. At that moment, he was in emotional turmoil. Great surprise and delight had filled him completely. He knew exactly how precious Fortune Jade was. It was a unique treasure of the world. He had even learned from the sword spirits that the Nirvanic immortal Exalt, known as the greatest expert of the vast immortals world, only possessed a piece of it, and it was not particularly big. It was only a third of the size of the Unata Grand Prime's Fortune Jade. Jian Chen could not help but begin breathing heavily. He forcefully suppressed his excitement as he continued to swing the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, carefully controlling its power to carve away the rock around the Fortune Jade. Very soon, a complete piece of the Fortune Jade was presented before Jian Chen. It was roughly the size of the projection he had previously seen on the 9th floor of the Anata Tower. The only difference was that the projection he saw was circular, shaped like a cushion, while the Fortune Jade before him was irregularly shaped and the size of a millstone. What a huge piece of Fortune Jade! It's probably the same size as the Anata Grand Prime's one. Jian Chen became overjoyed when he stared at the Fortune Jade before him. However, he seemed to think of something and immediately stowed the Fortune Jade into a space ring before leaving the Divine Hall and returning to the swamp. At that moment, he could no longer care about whether the presence of the Anata Tower would be exposed or not. He directly took out the tower in the bottom of the swamp and tossed the Fortune Jade in there. Jian Chen believed that something as precious as Fortune Jade could only be truly safe when stored in the Anata Tower. If he was elsewhere, he would have never been bold enough to take out the Anata Tower, as the risk of exposing himself would be far greater. It was much safer here as he could use the natural geography to his advantage. I hope that the presence of the Anata Tower won't be exposed, Jian Chen prayed inside. Even though he concealed the tower's presence to the best of his ability, he did not have complete confidence. After all, the peak experts all possessed exceptional abilities. Their capabilities had exceeded Jian Chen's realm of understanding. Suddenly, Jian Chen noticed something and looked to the side. The light in his eyes flickered as he pushed the power of his soul to the limit. He actually discovered an extremely well-hidden concealing formation there. This is a natural formation, similar to the formation around where the ancient sky wolf passed away that I accidentally barged into. They can only conceal, but they're flawless. All cultivators within formations like these basically only barge in accidentally. Jian Chen distinguished the type of formation it was very soon with his special soul. At this moment, something happened. The mud that pressed against Jian Chen in the surroundings began to churn violently. The powerful senses of a soul swept over with earth-shaking power, surging down from above. It approached the bottom of the swamp. Jian Chen's face suddenly changed. He had Mo Tianyun's mask as a disguise and had no reason to worry about being exposed by the senses of the soul alone, but since it had come, it had definitely discovered something strange here. If he was discovered by the senses of the soul, there would be quite a lot of trouble. He might even face the risk of being completely exposed. Without any hesitation at all, Jian Chen took a step and directly entered the concealing formation. As soon as Jian Chen's figure vanished, the senses of the soul followed closely and reached the depths of the swamp. It moved about there as if it was searching for something. However, Jian Chen was prepared beforehand. He left none of his presence there at all, so apart from the powder that he did not manage to clean up, he left no other traces at the bottom of the swamp. However, even though the presence within the powder had grown extremely thin, it had not dispersed entirely. Perhaps the minimal amount of presence was unable to hide anything from Jian Chen, but to someone else, it was impossible for them to discover it with the senses of their soul as long as some of the presence remained. As a result, the terrifying senses of the soul failed to find the powder. It also failed to discover the natural concealing formation there. In the end, it returned without finding anything after circling the bottom of the swamp for a while. Chapter 2272. The corpses of ancient beasts. Jian Chen was in no hurry to leave the concealing formation. Instead, he held his breath and concealed his presence, carefully hiding there and observing the situation at the bottom of the swamp. Under the protection of the natural concealing formation, he silently waited until the surging mud at the bottom of the swamp gradually settled down. Only then did he become relieved. He knew that the owner of the powerful senses of the soul had failed to find anything. Otherwise, the thing that had shot over would not have been as simple as the senses of their soul. It would be them in person. The senses of the soul seemed to have failed to discover the pile of powder I left there. If the powder was discovered, they would definitely know that someone has been here. If I was them, I'd definitely pay closer attention here or even visit this place in person, thought Jian Chen as his eyes shone brighter and brighter. Originally, He believed the rock powder he discarded could no longer hide anything as the presence from the fortune jade had leaked away. After all, the rock powder was no longer able to hide from him. Only now did he suddenly realize that while he could sense the rock powder, that did not mean other experts could sense the power as well. If the layer of rock around the fortune jade was used properly, it would have unimaginable uses. It's just a pity that I've realized this too late. I've chipped off all the rock already, so the presence in them is constantly leaking away. They won't last for long. Jian Chen was filled with regret. He sighed gently before quickly dismissing his thoughts. He temporarily put the matter of the fortune jade aside and began to study the world within the concealing formation seriously. There was only darkness as far as the eye could see, with no light at all. It was just completely pitch black. However, the darkness there did not affect Jian Chen at all. His eyes shone brightly, directly piercing through the darkness and seeing the scene around him completely. Exposed before Jian Chen was a long, narrow, and gloomy tunnel that led straight into the ground. The tunnel was twisted, spiraling down into the earth. It was impossible to see its bottom, which made it even more impossible to tell its depth. Jian Chen sent out the senses of his soul instinctively, but to his surprise, the entire tunnel was filled with a mysterious energy that caused great obstruction to the senses of his soul. Even with his soul that had changed drastically after fusing with a sliver of chaotic force, having gained various unbelievable abilities, it was only able to expand 5 kilometers into the tunnel. He had no idea how deep the tunnel was. Obviously, he found nothing with the limited range of his soul. This place is not very simple at all. Maybe there's some unknown, astonishing secret hidden down there. Jian Chen hesitated slightly as he stood within the narrow tunnel before beginning to make his way down. The underground tunnel hidden by a naturally occurring concealing formation had piqued Jian Chen's interest. Jian Chen used the steps to make his way down. Along the way, he maintained his great vigilance, observing the surroundings at all times. As a result, he did not move very quickly at all. It was impossible to have a sense over the flow of time in the dark tunnel. After who knows how long, Jian Chen finally reached the end of the tunnel. He was deep underground. He glanced around. His eyes shone and pierced through the darkness, allowing him to see everything in the surroundings. All he saw was a huge cavern. He had no idea how many tens of thousand meters it was in height, nor did he know how many tens of thousand meters it was in length. He had no idea how deep it was either. Even Jian Chen's eyes were unable to see the end of the cavern. As for the senses of his soul, the restraint here became even greater. The original 5 kilometers shrank to 1 kilometer. He could see further than that with his eyes. Suddenly, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. The light in his eyes flickered as he stared straight ahead. He could vaguely see a colossal shadow crouching on the ground extremely far away. It was just too far away. With Jian Chen's eyes alone, he was only able to see a blurry shadow. He was unable to tell what it was. Jian Chen took a step and unleashed all the power in his chaotic body. With a flash, he appeared several kilometers away, rapidly hurrying into the distance. This place was extremely well hidden. He did not need to worry about the peak experts on the desolate plain discovering him, so there was no need for him to continue hiding his strength. Under Jian Chen's full speed, he approached the huge shadow very soon. When he clearly saw what it was, he became completely stunned. It was a colossal, ancient beast, several 100,000 meters long. It lied on the ground without moving at all. It was a grand sight, several times larger than a mountain. As Jian Chen stood next to the beast with his stature, he even seemed smaller than an ant. The ancient beast had evidently died long ago. It gave off no presence of life at all, and it was covered in shackles upon shackles. Each shackle radiated with the power of laws and was firmly wrapped around the ancient beast, plunging into its flesh. The other end of the chain directly led off towards the depths of the cavern. Jian Chen became sterner and sterner as he studied the corpse of the ancient beast and the shackles on it. The ancient beast had died many years ago, but the tremendous vital energy within it had not run out yet. It remained as tremendous as an ocean. At this moment, the tremendous vital energy was being led into the depths of the cavern endlessly along the chain. Jian Chen arrived by the corpse and slowly extended his hand to touch it. He wanted to study the internal situation of the corpse. The corpse was warm to the touch, not icy cold. However, before Jian Chen could touch it properly, his face suddenly changed, and with a great jolt, He wrenched back his hand immediately. As if he was struck heavily, he staggered backwards. The ancient beast was just too powerful when it was still alive. Although it was dead now and reduced to a corpse, the tremendous vital energy within its body continued to circulate constantly. Just the regular circulation had sent Jian Chen retreating. If it was not for reaching the major achievement of the chaotic body, he probably would have been heavily injured by that alone. So powerful. Jian Chen was extremely shocked. He sensed his painful right arm that almost shattered from the huge burden as he was in awe. The ancient beast that had died many years ago and had its vital energy drained still possessed such terrifying might. Just how terrifying was it supposed to be when it was still alive then? Suddenly, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed, and he saw another blurry shadow in the distance. It was colossal. With a single movement, Jian Chen shot off like an arrow into the distance to see what was there. Very soon, he arrived before the second colossal shadow. He was completely taken back when he saw what it was. The shadow also happened to be a huge, ancient beast. He had no idea how long it had been dead for, and it was also surrounded by shackles upon shackles that plunged into the flesh. The shackles constantly drained away the tremendous vital energy and funneled it towards the depths of the cavern. What is this place? Jian Chen was astounded. Both of these ancient beasts were extremely powerful and must have made a name for themselves when they were still alive, but they had been shackled underground on the desolate plain now, reduced to tools that provided vital energy. Chapter 2273. The Headless Ape. Just what is in the depths of this cavern? It actually needs the constant supply of vital energy from two powerful ancient beast corpses, Jian Chen thought. He could not help but look towards the depths as he showed both surprise and doubt. In the end, Jian Chen did not try to touch the two corpses recklessly. The two ancient beasts were just too powerful when they were alive. As such, even after their deaths, Jian Chen still could not endure their residual might. Just the circulation of their vital energy could injure a few experts who had just reached the primordial realm. Afterwards, Jian Chen continued his investigation in the huge cavern, and his shock grew greater. To his surprise, he discovered that there were far more than just two corpses. He discovered a total of 6 colossal corpses of ancient beasts in various places. Without any exception, the 6 corpses were all covered in shackles as their tremendous vital energy was drawn away endlessly, delivered into the depths of the cavern. The 6 corpses varied in shape, and they all originated from different species. There was a mountainous serpent dragon as well as a winged, golden dragon that stood as large as a planet. They were extremely powerful, where the pressure from their corpses seemed to be able to make the sky collapse and silence everything. What extravagance! Who arranged all of this? Jian Chen was shocked. 6 corpses of terrifyingly powerful ancient beasts gathered together had quite the mental impact. He believed that any single one of them definitely would have been an invincible existence on the desolate plain if they were still alive, where no one could stop them. Unfortunately, they had already died many years ago. Continuing onwards, Jian Chen discovered a 7th corpse several tens of thousand kilometers away very soon. It was a humanoid being. She seemed like a young woman with great beauty, standing several hundred meters tall. She gave off a supreme presence of invincibility as an undefeatable battle intent revolved around her. She seemed like a goddess of war. This person was clearly not human. A feathered pair of colossal, golden wings draped down her back naturally. They were extremely pretty. Even though she no longer bore the presence of life, every single feather shone with resplendent golden light. It was dazzling as powerful energy circulate within. However, her fate was also the most chilling. A metal chain stretched over from the depths of the cavern and split into 3, piercing her dantian, heart, and the area between her eyes. The surging vital energy within her was constantly drained away by the metal chains that stretched towards the depths of the dwelling. Jian Chen became completely numb as he looked at the humanoid being that was hundreds of meters tall. He had completely fallen silent as his heart weighed heavily. After remaining there for a while, he continued on his way. Before long, he discovered an 8th corpse. The corpse belonged to a human expert. He had the appearance of a middle-aged man. He sat on the ground in golden robes as his eyes remained closed. A tremendous sense of righteousness revolved around the corpse. A metal chain had also been split into 3 here, piercing his dantian, heart, and the area between the eyes. The human expert had also died many years ago. He possessed no presence of life at all, only leaving behind the tremendous vital energy. Jian Chen had no idea how powerful the human expert was when he was still alive. Even though just a corpse remained, Jian Chen felt chills as his heart shivered when he stood before him. Clearly, the human expert's strength when he was still alive was no weaker than the 6 ancient beasts and the winged, humanoid being. Jian Chen stood several meters away as he stared at the human expert deeply. Sorrow filled his eyes. He knew that the human expert had not been someone sinful. The sense of righteousness that never dispersed was proof. He was definitely a straightforward man of righteousness. However, his fate was so chilling. He had been reduced to a tool to supply vital energy. Jian Chen felt grief from the bottom of his heart at this moment. However, he also knew that there was nothing he could do with his current strength. In the end, he bowed at the human expert deeply before leaving. Jian Chen continued on his way. He followed the chains and remained vigilant along the way, making his way towards the depths of the cavern. He seriously wanted to know just what was hidden in the depths of the cavern that required such terrifying amounts of vital energy. Before long, Jian Chen finally arrived at the depths. What he saw was a sea of blood. Terrifying vital energy shone with dazzling, blood-red light, dyeing the surroundings the same color. The crashing of waves constantly rang out from the sea of blood. The tremendous vital energy surged constantly in there, erupting with astonishing ripples of energy that possessed devastating might. Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He stared right ahead. He did not pay too much attention to the sea of blood. Instead, he focused on what was above the sea of blood. There was a huge ape covered in long, thick fur that hovered above the sea of blood without moving at all. The ape's fur was a dark gold. It lied there without moving at all and was missing a head. Only a colossal body remained. The ape had also died many years ago. The 8 chains gathered above the ape's corpse, vaguely forming a profound and complicated formation. It drew in the vital energy from the 8 corpses, and after being converted in the formation, it was poured into the ape. Jian Chen even discovered that the residual vital energy in the sea of blood below the ape's corpse poured into the corpse at an extremely gradual rate as well. It was slowly absorbed by the ape. The ape was not filled with a presence of death. Instead, it was brimming with life. Even though the life force was like nothing compared to the ape's shocking strength, it meant that the ape had not completely died yet at the very least. Its body still possessed a certain level of vitality. Has the tremendous vital energy been drained from the 8 great experts just to rear and support this headless ape that died long ago? Jian Chen was astounded as he stared at the ape closely. Who did all of this? Jian Chen looked at the cavern. He could already vaguely guess that someone was probably trying to revive the ape. Just nurturing the body of the ape required the corpses of 8 monstrously powerful experts. Then just how powerful was this ape with dark gold fur? Jian Chen took a step to approach the ape up ahead. He wanted to study it closer. However, when he reached 100 kilometers from the ape's corpse, terrifying vital energy erupted from the ape's body. Like a storm, it rushed towards Jian Chen in a single instance. Chapter 2274. The 8 experts. Jian Chen's face changed drastically. Without any hesitation, he retreated rapidly, but the vital energy was just too fast. In the end, it still struck Jian Chen with great force. Spurt. Blood sprayed out from Jian Chen's mouth as he was knocked away. The vital energy was just too terrifying. Even with the protection of the chaotic body, he still became quite injured. The eruption of energy from the ape's body immediately caused the sea of blood there to toss and turn. At the same time, ancient, lingering consciousnesses within the cavern awakened from their slumber as if they had been startled. Through his unique soul, Jian Chen immediately sensed the consciousnesses awaken in the cavern. It made him become uneasy. Do not get within 100 kilometers of the ancient great ape. How many years has it been? Finally, a living being has come. It's a pity that he's too weak. The consciousnesses all awakened and emitted mental pulses that echoed through the cavern. 8 blurry, illusionary figures appeared around Jian Chen. 2 of them were extremely familiar to Jian Chen. The first one was a beautiful woman. She possessed a pair of golden wings on her back and seemed exactly the same as the 7th corpse he had discovered. The only difference was that the 7th corpse stood several hundred meters tall, while the figure before him was the size of a human. The second familiar figure was the human expert he saw that gave off a sense of righteousness. Jian Chen glanced past the 6 other figures. They varied in age and gender, but they were all like apparitions as well. It was impossible for Jian Chen not to realize that the 6 remaining figures were the 6 colossal beasts he saw at the very start. However, they had not presented themselves in their original forms but as humans. Junior Jian Chen greets the 8 seniors. Jian Chen immediately clasped his fist towards the 8 illusionary figures as he showed respect from the bottom of his heart. This was respect towards power because he knew the 8 figures possessed extremely terrifying power when they were still alive. They could easily unleash devastating might, where they could disperse a galaxy with the flip of a hand. The 8 experts all looked at Jian Chen. As they studied Jian Chen, they could not help but shake their heads. Undisguised disappointment filled their faces. Indeed, he's too weak. We've waited for so many years, yet only a junior as weak as this has come. Sigh, he has already awakened our lingering consciousnesses. We don't have much time left. It's impossible for our lingering consciousnesses to keep existing since then. Once we're awakened, we'll disperse before long. It's just a pity that he cannot fulfill our request. We are out of options, so let's still try it. The 8 experts discussed with one another as they showed much helplessness. Jian Chen seemed to make out something from their conversation. He clasped his hands at the 8 experts and said, "Seniors, may I ask what you want me to do? If there's anywhere I am of use, and it is within my abilities, I will definitely assist you with all that I have." The illusionary figures of the 8 experts hovered in the air. After hearing Jian Chen's words, they entered a short moment of thought. Afterwards the human expert said, "You've already seen Gusta's body, so you must also understand that our existence is only to provide abundant vital energy to nourish Gusta's body." "Gusta? That headless ape?" Jian Chen asked. "That's right. The name of the ape is Gusta. He's the most powerful king of the ancient great apes. He died many years ago, having been beheaded. Although he seemed like he's dead, he's not completely dead. A sliver of life still remains. The experts of the ancient great apes wholeheartedly want to revive Gusta, so the 8 of us were trapped here by the 2 other kings of the ancient great apes. They used an ancient secret technique to drain our vital energy so that they could revive Gusta," said the human expert. Jian Chen came to a realization from that. Originally, he thought that the 8 experts had died in battle elsewhere before having their corpses being collected by someone and gathered here. He had never thought that the 8 of them had been trapped here while they were still alive. Every single one of the 8 experts was extremely powerful. Even after dying many years ago, they were still enough to make Jian Chen shivered. He struggled to imagine just how powerful the people who were able to trap such terrifying experts here would be. At this moment the winged woman said, "The ancient great apes want to use the 8 of us to revive their most powerful king. Naturally, we won't let them get what they wish. Not only will we prevent them from succeeding, but we'll completely destroy Gusta's body as well. However, the 8 of us are dead after all. All that remains is a sliver of consciousness that bears regret from our lives. We can't complete what needs to be done." The woman looked at Jian Chen deeply. "As a result, we can only leave the matter of destroying Gusta's corpse to you." Jian Chen's heart sank when he heard that. He said bitterly, "Seniors, I may have to disappoint you. My strength is puny. I can't even approach Gusta's corpse, let alone destroy it." Jian Chen felt troubled. Even if he possessed the strength to destroy Gusta's body, he would not be willing to do so. This was because once he did that, he would have completely offended the ancient great apes. "You don't need to worry. We've already set up everything when we were still alive. We just don't have the power to carry it out ourselves." The human expert said, "We've already engraved many layers of forbidden formations within our bodies. Once it's activated, it'll connect all of our bodies, and the remaining vital energy will fuse together. Even though our vital energy has been constantly drained away during all these years and only a bare minimum remains, there's still more vital energy when you pour it all together compared to any one of us at our peak conditions. We'll use the terrifying vital energy to deal a powerful attack through the formations, which would be enough to destroy Gusta's body. My bloodline contains the power of corpses. Humph, the ancient great apes dares to murder me, so I will never let them have things easy. Not only will I destroy Gusta's body, but my power of curses will also use Gusta's bloodline as a medium to curse all the clansmen of the ancient great apes across space. It'll make all of them pay a heavy price." An old man with a hooked nose fumed among the 8 experts. "The ancient great apes should become extinct. The the figures from the other ancient beasts all said together. They were filled with hatred. If I really do something like that, I probably won't be able to avoid being hunted down by the ancient great apes. That'll be both an arduous and fruitless matter for me to complete, said Jian Chen. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.